What up, what up, what up? It's your boy, All the Dialogue. I got a special guest on the line. So if you don't mind, introduce yourself to the people.
My name is Muta, formerly known as Napoleon from the Outlaws.
So let's take it from the top. Let the people know about your upbringing growing up in New Jersey.
Well, I'm born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, Irvington, New Jersey. Irvington is like a small township from Newark. I grew up in an environment on Chancellor Avenue, was my neighborhood block. I grew up, selling drugs, trying to sell drugs at a young age. My family, my brothers, my cousins, we pretty much was those that ran my block in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? So growing up at a young age, it was nothing but violence around me. Murdering, killing, drug dealing. But I was able to, at a young age, realize that that's not the life that I wanted for myself, even though I didn't know how to get out of that environment at that particular time. But one of the things that helped me escape that type of life was me writing, you know what I mean? Me writing poetry. And I would say that really saved my life by the permission of God, you know?
Right. So you had a tough upbringing. You started writing poetry to escape from the reality that was going on around you. When did Tupac come in the picture? Give me the backstory on that.
Well, I met Pac through Gaddafi, the Alfeo. Me and Gaddafi, we met probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And his moms used to come to my neighborhood. His mother, Yasmin, beautiful woman, a very nice woman, you know what I mean? Even though, unfortunately, we're not in touch anymore, but she just always been a good person. So she used to bring me from my neighborhood. My neighborhood was rough, like the hardcore ghetto. Montclair, where Gaddafi and them was from, it was pretty much the suburbs, a very good neighborhood, nice environment. But they had a bad part about it. They had a bad street called New Street. This is where all the ghetto kids will hang out on. That was Gaddafi block, Fatal block, and eventually Young Noble block, you know what I mean? So years after falling out of contact with Gaddafi, I happened to run into his mother. I was a young teenager, maybe 13, 14 years old at this particular time. And she asked me what's up with me, what I'm doing with my life. I told her I was trying to pursue a career in the music industry. She told me her son is doing the same thing, and he's the brother of Tupac Shakur. You know what I mean? So to my surprise, I knew Pac, you know what I mean? Growing up, I always leaned towards West Coast music. So it was more of the music from the West Coast was more of what I was going through at that particular time in my life, you know? It wasn't too many East Coast rappers that were speaking about gangster stuff. So I always leaned towards West Coast music. So when she told me Gaddafi is the brother of Pac or half brother or step brother, something like that, and that they was in New York, I was able to go get back in touch with Gaddafi and Pac. So when I met Pac, I would say about 14 years old, 15 years old at the latest.
So you meet Tupac at the age of 14 or 15. Take me through that journey of you dropping out of high school, going to Atlanta, and joining the group with Tupac.
Well, basically, I got kicked out of school. You know, we got a principal that came in, a new principal, and she asked for the top 100 names of the worst students, the worst people in the school, and my name was on the top 10. And she was like, basically, if you mess up again, you get kicked out. And I didn't take it serious because all the principals before that was like the homies, and they didn't really care, it seemed like, you know what I mean, if we failed or whatever. So she was serious. She came to shake up and change and make sure that she put her rules down. So when I messed up, she kicked me out of school. Then I went to night school, you know what I mean? So I got kicked out of school, started going to night school because my grandmother wanted me to continue school. But at that particular time, my concentration and my focus was on music. I already met Pac. They went back to Atlanta. So after getting out in trouble, didn't finish the school, I called Gaddafi and I said, I want to come to Atlanta. Or they invited me down, or I forgot exactly how it happened. So the homies, my man C and Shala B, they from my neighborhood, they gave me the plane ticket money. Back then, airline ticket was a lot, you know what I mean? So the early 90s. So they gave me the airline money to go to Atlanta, and that was history. I flew down to Atlanta, and they welcomed me with open arms. It was Edie down there, Gaddafi, Pac wasn't, when I first got there, Pac wasn't in town. I think he was in New York. And like 2 days later, we went to pick him up from the airport. So Gaddafi and myself, Gaddafi, Edie, and Kay, we got in the black Benz, one of Pac cars, and went to the airport and pick him up. And this was the time before 9/11, so you can walk all the way to the gate and wait for, whoever you're picking up from the airport to come out. So we got to the gate and Pac came out, and I don't think he even knew I was coming. So when he seen everybody, he's like, "Oh, Muta, what's up, man? When you get out here?" He was surprised to see me out in Atlanta. So we just started, from the time that he got out to Atlanta, he started going to, he put us in the studio. My whole time, I wanted to be a solo artist. So I never was expecting Pac to put me in a group with him. You know what I mean? So when we started doing songs together, he decided to put me in a group. And at that time, we was called the Young Thugs. A lot of people don't know we went from being Young Thugs to Dramacidal, then to the Outlaws.
Hey, yo, tell me if this true. When you recorded your first song as a member of Tupac group, you brought Tupac to tears?
We was recording, the first song, when we got out there, the first song, I forget the name, Killing Fields, I believe the name is. When he heard us do that song, Killing Fields, I came up with the hook. See, the Outlaws, Edie at that time was Big Mouth, K was K-Dog, and Gaddafi name at that time was Hollywood. They was always grimy. They always had their lyrics, but when I came with more something just from the streets. Like the first hook was like, Killing Fields, talking about killing and murder. Gaddafi had that in him too, from Jersey, you know what I mean? And we all had our own unique style. But I guess when Pac heard that song, man, it took him to tears. And he was like, this is what I was trying to get out of y'all. And he was like, from that day on, he was like, man, I'm going to call y'all the Young Thugs. He went to the studio with us a couple days, and it would just work, you know what I mean? But when we wasn't in the studio, we just chilled at his house. From day one, they treated me like family, you know what I mean? Pac, his mom, Glow, Castro mother, they just good people, you know what I mean? They good people, and they have that side of them that, that people don't really get to see, that Pac side, that he's just a genuine good dude. Because he didn't have to, you know what I mean? He didn't have to help me, because even before like when I first met him, man, I was trying to get him to listen to my demo for like months. Like, man, when is dude gonna listen to my demo? And he was just filling me out all that time, you know what I mean?
Right. If I'm not mistaken, when you met Tupac, that was around the same time Tupac got accused of rape and got shot at Quad Studios, right?
It was pretty much around the same time, and that's why in the book I probably go into more details more than what I can do right now, but I can break it down. It was pretty much when I first met Pac. I think maybe like a year, 6, 7, 8 months later to a year. That's when he started going through all of that. You know what I mean? And I was actually in Atlanta with him when the phone call came that he got shot. So not with him, I mean Atlanta at his family house when the phone call came that he got shot, and it was definitely. Pac, he's a soldier, you know what I mean? So when he called and spoke to everybody at the house, he got on the phone. They put me on the phone with him, and his exact words was, "You didn't think that I'd let them take me from you so soon." I can't go in too much details, bro, because I gotta get y'all to get that book, but but you know what I mean. But so when that happened, man, it was difficult. Even like I said in my book, I'm gonna go into more details about his paranoia at that time. He wasn't really trusting nobody. That's why he checked himself out the hospital. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm not going to stay in the hospital, be sitting duck while these dudes might come and try to finish me in the hospital. So Pac was like, no, I'm not going to, you know what I mean? But when word got back what happened, you hear all types of rumors that he shot himself and stuff like that, which is far from the truth. You know what I mean? Pac just was the type of person, he had them guns on him. And when they came and, try to rob him, Pac pulled out, getting ready to shoot, you know what I mean? I think he might have let one off, and then that's when they started shooting at him. You know what I mean?
Right. But if I'm not mistaken, tell me if I'm wrong. Big Stretch was the one relaying messages to Tupac while Tupac was in the hospital, right? From Jimmy Henchman.
Well, we was at now the world know Jasmine Guy house at that particular time. Jasmine Guy, Pac he was staying at her house while he was like, just some healing up, getting his strength back, and Stretch was coming back and forth. Saying Jimmy Henchman. I remember he was like, Jimmy Henchman said, you don't want to go to war, you don't have your money right. And I'm like I said in another interview, from a street dude, that was all strange to me. You know what I mean? Because I was like, and Pac, there's a lot of things that happened Pac shared with us, and a lot of things that happened he didn't want to share with us. You know what I mean? He didn't share with us. But for me, being a street dude at that particular time, I said, that didn't sit right with me. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, Pac, if that's your boy, how is he bringing you messages from the enemies? It just didn't fit right with me. You know what I mean? So, I heard interviews with Big Stretch brother, and he's my man. You know what I mean? Big Stretch brother, Madge. He's still connected with a lot of the Pac family in L.A., and he had his side of the story, why certain things happen. And at the end of the day, you never know, bro. It's between, you know what I mean? It's between, God knows. Like, God knows the truth. So when I heard Madge say his side of the story, and then I spoke to Zayd, and he told me his side. At the end of the day, I just said, it's one of them things where it just got me saying Allah knows best what happened. And if anything we can say about the situation, Pac was definitely hurt the way Stretch handled it. Even if we say, for example, you know what, we don't really have 100% proof that Stretch was down with it. Let's say we want to say that, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it hurt Pac the way he moved. So they fell out, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's very, very, very out of pocket, man. To be relaying messages to your friend from the person that was behind the attack, that's beyond disrespect, man.
Exactly. I like the way we roll. Like I just, you know what I mean. It was I was a youngster, so I couldn't really just get up and say, "Oh, Pac, do this and do that," because Pac was still he was our big brother, he was our leader, he was a soldier, so we let him lead the way. You know what I mean? And but back then, to me, I said, "Nah, that don't sit right. How you gonna come?" You know what I mean? You know, so it is what it is. So they fell out because of that. You know what I mean? And it was a situation, man, that Pac. Like the world was making it seem like Pac was just going crazy on everybody and attacking everybody. Nah, he felt like when he was at his lowest, the people that he thought was the closest to him, they all turned their back on him. You know, they all turned his back on him. And that's why when you see Pac flipping out the same way he flipped out on Snoop at the end, it's not for no reason. Pac is not a person he's not a hater like that. He's not going to go around and start dissing and attacking people for no reason. Because if you look at Pac's life before that, he bigged up the East Coast. You know what I mean? He always spoke highly of him. It wasn't until he felt like everybody around him was turning their back on him. And that's the way he, you know what I mean, he handled his business. But it wasn't like he was waking up saying, I'm going to diss this rapper today. No, everybody he attacked or said something against, he had his reasons, you know?
Right. So it's a rumor that's been going around for years, and I want to get your opinion on it. How do you feel about people that say that Tupac has something to do with Bitch Scratch murder?
Nah. Definitely not. Everybody know, you know, Stretch got it. He got what happened to him was like some street beef that he got into with some New York dudes. And it never got to that point where Pac, I never heard it out of Pac where he even wanted something bad to happen to Stretch. And that's why he said it in the song. You switch sides, I guess your new friends wanted you dead. You know what I mean? Pac said it. And I never heard Pac say any, you know, he was hurt. And hands down, he was hurt. But he never, even his song, You Better Holler at Me, when you see me, you better holler at me. He was still saying when he sees Stretch, I need answers. So, you know, when Pac was around, I never heard him say he want any harm, anything bad to happen to Stretch. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's somebody else I want to ask you about, man. Ed Lover, man. I mean, this dude stay going on platform after platform, talking about the whole Tupac Quad Studio incident, and he wasn't even there. So everything he talking about is secondhand information and hearsay. So, how do you feel about that, man? Ed Lover, you know, going on platform after platform, speaking on something that he wasn't even at.
See, the thing is that everybody have an opinion these days. You know what I mean? Everybody going, like you said, he wasn't there. You know what I mean? Everybody have their own opinion. I'm shocked that people are still speaking about the Quad Studio shooting, what happened, what did not happen. A lot of them jokers know exactly what happened. And, you know what I mean? Maybe he just wants some shine. But at the end of the day, most of the people that do speak about Pac, as you mentioned, he wasn't there. They probably didn't. Like he knew Pac. You know what I mean? He knew Pac, but he wasn't there to, like you said, he calling what he's speaking on is the count from what he gonna hear from those rappers that was in the studio that day. You know, everybody have their opinion.
Tupac gets shot at Quad Studios. He goes to the hospital or whatever. Then he leaves the hospital because of his paranoia. He go to location to location. Then he finally finds a stable home with Jasmine Guy. Was you in contact with Tupac while he was at Jasmine Guy house?
Was what? Sorry about that.
No, I said, was you still in contact with Tupac when he was at Jasmine Guy house?
I was with him. We was with him. All of us we was actually living in Jasmine Guy house with him. You know what I mean? We had a hotel room not too far from it, but we was there with Pac every day. Like some days we'd go to the hotel and sleep, but majority of the time we would sleep there. You know what I mean?
Right. It seems like she had a lot of love for Tupac, man. Shout out to Jasmine Guy, man.
The Jasmine Guy was a good person, man. She really Pac had a lot of good, you know, people in his life, man, that really genuinely tried to help, and she was one of them. She definitely is one of them.
So Tupac goes to prison. Take me behind the scenes, man, because I'm pretty sure you was going up there seeing him a lot. So take us behind the scenes, man. How was Tupac feeling, and what are some of the conversations you had with Tupac while he was in prison?
Well, while we was all visiting Pac, I didn't really have that many phone conversations with him during the particular time he was in prison, but we was going back and forth to visit him. Like one day, one group would go, the next day, two. Like we stayed visiting him. And he had a lot of anger, you know what I mean? While he was in prison, he was like, you got to understand, man, he's in prison. And he listening to songs like Who Shot You? He reading interviews from East Coast rappers saying this about him. He was like, look, man, I was really ready to come out and try to really be on something positive. You know what I mean? And this is another thing I touch up on my book when I put up the excerpt not too long ago, but Pac said that they wasn't letting him. You know what I mean? Everybody was taking shots at him, and it felt like they was kicking him while he was down. So he pretty much was strategizing like, look, when I come out, it's going to be no mercy. You know what I mean? He said, because how can they do this to me? How can they put me in this situation? They shoot me. They lie said I raped a girl. And next thing you know, now all of a sudden, all the rappers have an opinion. Now they want to talk. When he was out, he was on the streets. Nobody had that much courage to say his name or speak bad about him. You know what I mean? So he looked at it like, man, they could have did it. If they had this feelings that they didn't like me, they could have said this to me when I ran into him in the club this day or that day. You know what I mean? Yeah, so he looked at it like, you know, they wait for him to be down, to be locked in a cage, to finally, you know, talk like men. You know what I mean? But when he was out, they was running into him in these clubs, and they was running into him in New York, and nobody had nothing to say in his face. You know what I mean? So Pac, I remember visiting him, man. He was really like, he was angry. He was hurt. And that's why when he came out, they seen how he was aggressive. They seen another side of him that they didn't know exists, because they pretty much, they forced that out of him. You know what I mean?
Right. So how did Suge Knight get in the picture? And who was behind Tupac joining Death Row? Snoop or Keisha Morris?
It was Keisha. It was Keisha who was Pac's wife. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't know, even Suge mentioned this. Suge wanted to sign Pac a long time ago. He used to run into him in L.A., and even Suge mentioned it in the interview that he ran into Pac in L.A. with the Thug Life homies, and he was trying to sign Pac, and Pac just walked out of the interview like, you know how Pac is wild. He was like, he was wild, but he wasn't ready back then. So when Pac got locked up and he seen that Interscope wasn't really backing him, he had Keisha call Suge and say, this is one dude that Pac that he knew always wanted to sign him, always wanted him to be on his record label. You know what I mean? So that's when Pac had Keisha contact Suge and to get in contact with him. So when we was going back up there to visit him, he was telling us everything. Like, yeah, you know, I talked to Suge, and he was telling me who's the riders on the label, who's not, who's this, who's that, and I'm going to Death Row. You know what I mean? A lot of people, and that's another thing. A lot of people don't want to give Suge his props. You know what I mean? He did a lot of terrible things, and who haven't? We all did terrible things. We all did crazy things. You know what I mean? It was one particular time myself and the rest of the Outlaws, we was bumping heads with Suge, but we was able to sit down and talk. I'm the type of person that's never going to speak down on a person when he's not here to defend himself. You know what I mean? So people say all the stuff that Suge done. Suge done a lot of good for people. You know what I mean? He put $1.3 million cash up for Pac. So when Interscope and all them say that he got the money, these are all lies. Suge didn't need Interscope money. Death Row record was worth, $200-300 million at that particular time. So when Suge put that $1.3 million bail money up, Pac, he asked Pac, what else do you want? Pac said, I want to buy a house for my mother, cash. He bought a house in Atlanta, cash. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that all the business dealings was 100% kosher, you know what I mean? But he tried his best. He tried his best to have Pac back. You know what I mean?
Right. But while Tupac was in prison, did Tupac ever talk to you personally about him joining Death Row?
Yeah, he mentioned to us that he was going to go to Death Row, and that Suge was the one that's going to bail him out. And I'm not sure if you got the part that I mentioned how Suge always tried to sign Pac. In the past, he tried to sign him, and Pac wasn't ready. You know what I mean? So he knew that Suge always wanted him on his label, and he knew that he can call Suge, and Suge would come through for him, and that's exactly what he did. So Pac was excited when he told us he was going to Death Row.
So Tupac actually was happy to join Death Row, because there's been rumors for years that Tupac didn't want to join Death Row, but he had no choice because Suge Knight was the only one willing to bail him out.
Nah, he wasn't pretty much forced to. You know what I mean? Suge, like even Suge mentioned in the interview before, he ran into Pac and someone in L.A. in the scope, and he was trying to get Pac back then, but Pac walked out of the meet and he was wild. And Suge was like, back then he wasn't ready. Like they always had some type of mutual respect for each other. So Pac knew, and it was a strategic move for Pac. You know what I mean? He knew who he was facing on the East Coast. He knew his home was West Coast at this particular time, and who else can be on his side and have his back like Suge? You know what I mean? And he was excited. Definitely was excited.
So why do Snoop keep doing these interviews and going on these platforms claiming that he's the reason why Tupac joined Death Row?
I really don't know why, man. Like, I don't know why he keep throwing Pac under the bus. I don't know why he keep making up these stories. I really don't know. He's Snoop Dogg. He don't need to make up stories for fame. The people love him. You know what I mean? I just don't know why he keep throwing Pac under the bus and keep making up these things. Like I said to you earlier, man, in order for him to really be positive role model to these youngsters, then come clean and say, look, I was this, I was beefing, I was doing this with Pac, and you know what I mean. Tell the truth, but don't keep beating around the bush and making it seem like something that it ain't. You know what I mean? I really don't know why, for real, bro.
Right. So give me a play-by-play. You finding out Tupac was joining Death Row, you going from New Jersey to L.A. and getting back connected with Tupac.
I remember the day he got out of prison. He hit us up, let us know he's on his way to L.A. The first two people that joined him was Fatal and Gaddafi. He actually met Gaddafi. I mean, he actually met Fatal while he was in prison. Gaddafi was like, yeah, I got a homie that can rap. So Pop was like, bring him up here, let me hear him. And so he came out with him. Gaddafi, Fatal, flew out like the next day. A couple of days later, myself, Edie, and Castro went out there. They was all staying in my grandmother's house with me in Irvington. And when we got out there, man, that's all he was doing is working. He had a powerhouse behind him. He had protection. He had, you know what I mean? You know, when Pop went to Death Row, it was an atmosphere that a lot of ways it turned out to be unhealthy for him because, you know, Suge is wild and Pac is wild. Pac, at that particular time, he needed something like Death Row as far as the record label that's going to push him, that's going to stand behind him, and even the muscle, you know what I mean? Suge, not necessarily, like Suge had muscle around him, you know what I mean? So Pac, it was a good team, but the thing is that was missing, that Pac needed someone to tell him to slow down. That's what was missing, you know what I mean? He needs someone, and I believe that's what unfortunately led up to his demise, is that he never had anyone that can really, you know, at one particular time when he was around Big Syke and he was around, what's his name? Big Syke, Noob, like the homies like that, you know, they was able to really control him a little bit. But when you go to Death Row and it's an environment, everybody's wild, everybody's crazy, pretty much. It was actually difficult for Pac to be able to have some type of discipline over there. You know what I mean? He was wild. Suge was wild. You know what I mean? If he come and say, hey, Suge, I'm about to go knock somebody out, Suge will be like, okay, I'm coming with you. But Pac needed somebody to be like, no, you're not going to go knock somebody out. You the artist. You know what I mean? You're going to sit back here and you're going to, like, that's what Pac was missing, man, unfortunately.
So All Eyes on Me comes out. It goes gold the first week. All Eyes on Me goes on to go 5 times platinum. Tupac is the #1 rapper in the game. How was it like being around Tupac at the highest point of his career?
It was like, man, Pac, he didn't let it get to his head. You know what I mean? And he always treated us like family. And he was an individual, man. Even when Pac was the type, man, even if he got to celebrate his album going platinum, he in the studio doing more work. You know what I mean? He was a very family-orientated individual. But I didn't realize how powerful how much of a celebrity he was until we started walking into malls with him, and pretty much everything was shut down. You know what I mean? He'll walk in the store, they literally have to, and this is before social media and all that extra stuff, they literally have to close the store down because they can't control the amount of people that's trying to run inside the store. You know what I mean? So he was an individual, but he was humble. Pop was the type of person, man. He had all that fame and stuff, but he didn't know how to. He didn't let it get to where, for example, when you get to a certain level, you have to realize that certain things you cannot move and carry your life on the way you used to do. You know what I mean? Pop was the star. He was the leader, but at the same time, he was the homie. Like Pop is the type of person that we run in his house and say, man, I just got into an argument, or I just got into a fight with this dude around the corner. He would be the first one saying, where you at? Come down. And this happened. It happened times in L.A. I remember we was in one of these, we was in a hotel somewhere in Beverly Hills, because some days he'd just get hotels near the strip or whatever, and we'd just chill there. So we was in a hotel, and we talking to somebody, and it was me, I think, and Gaddafi was downstairs talking to somebody. And the dude we was talking to happened to be one of Bone Thugs and Harmony's homies. And while we down there talking to him, I guess the dude was a little drunk, so his voice was a little loud. So Pop, looking from the balcony, thought we was getting into it. So all of a sudden, we turn around, we just saw Pop running towards the dude. What's up? What's up? With his hands up, you know what I mean? So he was that type of person that he's already a star, you know what I mean? So unfortunately, he was humble, you know what I mean? Pop was a humble dude, man. He was like an everyday homie.
Right. But you made a comment earlier about how Tupac used to go to the mall and all the stores were shut down. But I always heard the rumor that Tupac used to go to the Beverly Center without security. Is that true?
Yeah. Pop used to always go everywhere. He used to purposely shake the security. Like Pop could be anywhere by himself. Like he'd just pop up and just be. That's what I said. He forgot that. I don't know if he forgot or he didn't really realize the level that he was on. He kept trying to live his life like a normal homeboy, a normal dude from the hood. But he didn't realize that he was pretty much the biggest celebrity as far as in urban America worldwide that we had at that particular time for our generation. He didn't realize that. So many times he would just be Beverly Hills, Beverly Center by himself, and anywhere, you know what I mean? In the hood by himself. He got into an incident. I remember he told me the story how when he got into the incident when Treach and was in one of these clubs in L.A. in the roller 60s, I think they did something to Treach, and Treach, left out the club, and the rumor was that the roller 60s are looking for Pac. So Pac said when he heard that rumor, he's like, man, I got in my car, you know what I mean, with my heat on me, and I went to the roller 60 neighborhood, and when he seen like a group of dudes on the corner in the house or whatever, he jumped out, like, what's going on? I'm Tupac. You know what I mean? And he talked to him man to man. He said they all shook his hand and they had a lot of love for him. You know what I mean? He didn't say he went over there on some gangster stuff like, look, I'm here to, he knew. He was like, look, I'm just the type of individual that, okay, these people looking at me. I know they reputable people in L.A. I'm gonna go to them face to face and squash whatever it is. And people respect that about Pop. He didn't go in hiding. You know what I mean? He went to them and said, look, you know what I mean? It's all love between me. I don't know how y'all rumor got out, y'all looking for me, whatever. I'm here in y'all hood to show y'all that it's all love. They hug Pop, you know what I mean? And they chill. He said he chilled at the house with them in their hood for a little bit and on their porch, and then he left. You know what I mean? That's why the people love Pop,
Right. And the reason why I brought that up is because I heard an interview from Sir Mix-a-Lot, and he told a story about how he seen Tupac at the Beverly Center at the Foot Locker like a regular person, and he didn't have no security, and he was wearing a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, he's like that, hands down. You know what I mean? That's how he was. Because there's many times we was out with him without security, but we would always have a gun on us. Like, we would never, ever be, even with security, Pop would make sure one of us, if not a few of us from the Outlaws, we all have to carry heat on us. And if Pop go outside by himself, he had a gun on him. Hands down, that's Pop. If you don't see a security with him, just know he got a gun on him. Pac was fascinated with guns, bro.
Wow, man. And he was a shooter too, right? He could actually shoot, right? Because he went to the gun range and all that, right?
He was fascinated with guns. He was a shooter. He was like that since he was a youngster. And he would never be somewhere by himself without a gun, with a weapon on him. He just wasn't that type of person. You know what I mean? If he don't have security with him, even when we got security, we behind him with a strap on us. But he just felt like, and that's why I hurt him when he got shot the first time, and the people, the girl lied and said he raped her. It hurt him because he was like, I was doing my music, I was doing so much for our peoples. He just thought that our people won't be the one that hurt him. You know what I mean?
Right. And he was a shooter. Like, if you from a distance, he can still get you. Like, he really knew how to shoot.
Yeah. He was a Black Panther son. He knew how to shoot that gun, hands down.
Tell me about the lifestyle, my man. You being in LA with Tupac on an everyday basis, what is some of the stuff you did with Tupac?
The lifestyle, when we first got there, every day we was in the studio. It was definitely one of these, it was a wild environment because any given moment, Pac home. So everybody want to come by the studio, check him out and visit him. Nothing but gang members, gang bangers, weed, drugs, guns. It just was like an everyday wild party, you know what I mean? And for us who were young Jersey dudes who were wild, it was something that we enjoyed every single day. Pop did he was very good with keeping us out of trouble though. He tried his best, at least he tried his best. So he didn't just let us go off the edge and just do whatever we wanted. He was still there. As a wild individual he was still there putting us in check when we pushed the envelope a little too far. So every day the studio, you know what I mean? Pop wanted to work. Up until he died, he wasn't the type of person that was in clubs. It's rare that he would be in a nightclub. You know what I mean? He wasn't into that, man. He always wanted to work every day in the studio, from his house to the studio, going to a movie set. You know what I mean?
Right. What is some of the stuff y'all did for fun? Because I heard that y'all used to play basketball with Snoop and all that. So what is some of the stuff y'all did for fun?
Yeah, we'd do that. You know, like every Saturday, we started like a tournament, Thug Life Outlaws against Dog Pound. So we'd go to Snoop crib and play basketball. We also pop bought us a whole bunch of paint guns, you know what I mean? Paintball guns, paint guns, and we'd just go to, I remember we drove out like the one-on-one real far somewhere in the mountains, and we just go around and just, you know, do paintball, paint guns, shooting at each other, you know what I mean? I forgot what it was, it was so long ago. But that's how it was, and other than that, or we'd be at his crib, you know what I mean, talking and chopping it up, or going out to dinner. You know, he was pretty much 90% of the time he left the house or did something, he brought us with him. You know what I mean? And that's how we rolled. We were just people that, you know, he barely did things by himself. So it was a lifestyle. It was fun. You know, we also had apartments at the Oakwood apartment. So some days we'd go over there and we'd play basketball there. Pop would come and join us. You know, some days we'd be at the Oakwood. He'd drop us off at the Oakwood. We wouldn't see him for 2 days, 2 or 3 days. So we had to just fend for ourselves. Just a bunch of young teenagers sharing 2 apartments. Just wild, you know?
Right. Y'all went on tour after All Eyes on Me dropped, right?
We did a tour, a few city tours, states across the USA. It was at a time where, you know, when Pop first came out, you know, it wasn't really that much touring going on for rap music because of the deaths that used to happen at these stadiums and stuff like that. So these tour agencies decided to give it another chance. So we did a tour, you know, like ourselves, Snoop Dogg, Dre, Dog Pound, Gonzo, Caution, and them, DJ Quick, about 4 or 5 cities before I think somebody else got killed and they stopped the tour.
Right. But hey yo, is it true that because I always heard this rumor, but is it true that it was hard for Tupac to perform places because people felt like he was a liability?
I can imagine that. You know what I mean? I can't recall anything offhand, but it doesn't sound like something far off. You know, far-fetched. You know, because in the past when he was doing, even before he went to Death Row, he would do events and anything would pop off. You know what I mean? I think he was in Chicago one day. The whole stadium he started beefing with, something crazy.
Crazy, man. So after All Eyes on Me and after y'all did a tour, Tupac started doing movies. So tell me how that was like, man, being on set with Tupac while he shoot movies.
For us, it was the most boring part of his life, but for him, now it was something like Pop loved acting. He would have been, if he would have been alive, Allah knows best, he would have been like the first, you know, like the Will Smith that you see, these Will Smith and these Jamie Foxx and these people getting $15-20 million a movie. I think Pop would have been there. You know what I mean? And he was trying to lean towards more of acting. So rap probably would have been something that he would have dropped every once in a while, but he was going towards acting. He wanted to, you know?
I actually seen a interview from Tupac where he said that he was gonna start doing more movies and less music or whatever. But you got any untold stories from being on set with Tupac while he was shooting the movie?
I think we was Pop Funny. I remember one time the movie, I think gang related right before he died. Belushi, this actor Belushi, he used to say a lot of slick stuff that even felt a little racist. You know what I mean? And one time, Pop particular, I think he walked on the trailer and he bit Noble Hamburg or something like that. You know, just this actor thinking he's doing something funny. And Noble was just laughing. And Pac didn't really, you know, laugh. And then when it was over, Pac was like, man, why you ain't punch that dude in the face? Like, why you ain't hook off on that dude? Like, and Noble was like, I didn't know, man. You would have got mad. And I was like to Pac, man, I wish I would have known we could have punched him in the face. I've been ready to punch this dude in the face from day one. You know what I mean? Pac was like, man, don't let nobody, you know, do that to you. And so he was that type of person, you know what I mean? But we was also his young homies who was cautious. Like when he bit no hamburger, no was just laughing. No looking at it like, I don't want to mess Pac movie deal out, you know what I mean? Beat this dude up and all of a sudden they kick Pac off the set. But Pac was one of them type of dudes. Like, I don't care about this movie. I don't care about the set. If somebody violates you, you put him in his place. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's the one thing I can recall. Other than that, we pretty much stayed in the trailers. You know what I mean? I know some of the movie sets we'd be leaving 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning. Like, we pretty much stayed in the trailer and watch him do his thing, you know? He'd come back in the trailer, drop and do about 50, 60 push-ups, go back out. You know what I mean? He loved acting. That was his thing.
Machiavelli, how did that album come about? And give me the backstory behind you being a part of it.
Well, Machiavelli, my pop did Machiavelli. I wasn't there. You know, I went to Jersey, and my grandmother passed away, and I stayed in Jersey for some time. And when I got back, the album was done, and that's why on that song that I done with him, Outlaw. What is it? Not Outlaw. Life is an outlaw, you know what I mean? That's why in that song he's like, would you die for me? Would you kill for me? And I said, on my grandmother. I just came back from more than my grandmother. So when I got back, the album was finished, you know what I mean? And he decided to do that one song. I think he did that album in a matter of 5 or 6 days, something. He just knocked it out, you know what I mean? But I think, you know, listening to that album at that particular time, it was a side of Pac that I never heard. You know what I mean? He was a little more deep. And I think he was going back on that in that album where he did a lot of conscious songs before he did the All Eyes on Me. That album, it seemed like he was going back to trying to put some conscious, you know, some messages in there it was more positive to me than some of his other records, you know what I mean? At least All Eyes on Me.
Right. So we fast forward to the MTV Awards. Take me through that entire week, Tupac being in New York, and give me the backstory behind the Tupac and Nas incident.
Yeah, when we went to the MTV Awards, it was the first time Pac went back to New York after being shot and being released from prison. So he was very cautious, you know what I mean? And he went there, you know, people was giving him a lot of love. My homies from Jersey, my brothers, my cousins, we held Pac down. You know, Jersey, Gaddafi and the boys, we was deep. And blood, it was a lot of us strapped. I know at least 30 of my homies was there, and they brought at least 8 guns. You know what I mean? And also we had the Death Row homies, the LA homies, the Shield security guard with guns. So I remember we was at the park, and Nas and Pac see each other. They walked towards each other. Nas was deep, and this is one of the things that I respect Nas for. In fact, I just spoke with him, you know, through text messages a couple days ago. This dude is a real individual, you know what I mean? Where he didn't let even after Pac put that song out dissing Nas never let it got to him. His pride never kicked in. He came back and talked slick about Pac because he knew Pac was going to take that out. So when him and Pac came together in that park, Nas was with his homies. He was deep. We was with our homies. We was deep. Him and Pac talked like two generals. You know what I mean? They spoke like two generals. They chopped it up. Pac and Nas pretty much was telling each other we should have never went at each other. They shook hands, and Pac was like, look, when I go back to L.A., I got a song dissing, I'm going to remove it. You know what I mean? And it was one of them things that I think eventually they would have did music together. And it's one of them things in hip-hop that is so unfortunately that people don't spread that. Even when they do spread it, they don't give it justice, or they lie or they twist it. That's something positive, you know what I mean? They would spread all day the negativities that came out of the East Coast, West Coast beef, but why you don't spread something like that? Why you don't show that two generals? You know what I mean? Because he pretty much had his army, Nas. Pac had his homies, he had his army. It could have been a bloodbath in that park. Everybody was strapped, but they spoke like men, and they shook hands, you know what I mean? They let the world know that it can be done. So that's a day that I would never forget.
Why was Tupac beefing with Nas in the first place?
Yeah, see, a lot of people don't know, like, Nas did a song, I think, with Mobb Deep, and in the song Mobb Deep was like saying stuff like thug life, we still living it. You know what I mean? And Nas had some words where he's like fake thug, no love, or something like that. Pac was looking at it, he was looking at it like Nas was coming at him. You know what I mean? On these Mobb Deep songs. The same way with Jay-Z. Pac, that's why I said when Pac came at somebody, it was because something he heard that he felt like they were subliminal messages against him. You know?
Right. So y'all in New York, Snoop get on the radio and say he cool with Biggie and Puffy. How did Tupac feel about that?
Man, it hurt Pac. You know what I mean? Pac is the type of person, if he's your friend, he's all in. He's all in. And, you know, first of all, Snoop was dissing Biggie and him on the radio. I mean, not on the radio. He was dissing Biggie and him in songs when he was on Death Row. He was dissing Biggie with Pac and Puffy. And even in conversations, he was telling Pac, yeah, let's ride on these dudes, this and this and that. And then when he get to New York, he'd get on the radio and say to my homeboys. So Pac like, how you back in L.A. dissing these dudes on songs? Now you're in New York, you're saying them your homeboys. So that effect, that hurt Pac. You know what I mean? It hurt Pac. And that's why I said, man, it's like, In order for Snoop to be a positive role model to these youngsters, man, he had to come clean. He had to stop making it seem like he was the innocent one and everybody was doing East Coast, West Coast beef, and he was the only one that had the right head on his shoulders at that particular time. No, you cannot be a positive influence on these youngsters until you come clean and say, look, I made this mistake. Yeah, I was part of the East Coast, West Coast beef, but that was 20 years ago. The new Snoop, however, I'm telling you not to make those same mistakes that I've done because unfortunately we lost Pac, we lost Biggie, but he's not doing that. You know what I mean? He's throwing Pac under the bus every interview. Yeah, so when Pac was doing that, I beat my murder case, and I was like, no, we shouldn't do that. No, bro, you was dissing Biggie, you was dissing Puffy, you was riding with Pac winners. You know what I mean? So this is what I don't really understand. So that hurt Pac. You got to understand, man. Pac, it hurt Pac because he's like, man, I'm here ready to diss anybody that Snoop have a beef with. So when Pac heard him get on the radio and say that, he felt like he was stabbed in the back. You know what I mean? He felt like, you know what I mean? He was hurt. And when you hear him in these interviews, it's like, why did you fall out with Pac? And he said, oh, because I told Pac them my homeboys. So I told Angie Martina them my homeboys, and they all my homeboys. Them some quick homeboys. You just dissing them in L.A. Now all of a sudden they're your homeboys in New York. At that particular time, Biggie and Puffy wasn't even saying Snoop was their homeboys. They was dissing them. You know what I mean? So that hurt Pac.
If you don't mind, my man, can you give me the backstory behind Tupac calling you and the Outlaws in the room and giving away his jewelry days before the Vegas incident?
Well, that story, he actually called me first. He was in New York. He was like, Mo, come to the room. I went up to the room. He had a table with all his jewelry out, his Rolex watches, rings, chains, and everything. And I remember he had like this Rolex watch with all like diamonds. He was like, Mo, take some. I'm like, huh? He's like, take some. So I took the bracelet. I didn't want to go through his best like jewelry, like, cause I was still shy. This is my homie. I'm like, man, I ain't about to take the $50,000 watch. Okay, I'll take the bracelet. So I took the bracelet. He's like, take something else. I took a ring. Man, take something else. And I took a chain. And I went out in the hallway and I told Gaddafi and Edie. Gaddafi and Edie, I was like, man, Pop just called me in his room, asked me to take this jewelry. I think I gave the ring to Edie, the chain to K. Gaddafi. Sorry about that. And that was it. You know what I mean? That was it. He didn't call the rest of the Outlaws inside. I think later on when he seen No with Fatal, he told Fatal to wear he gave Fatal the Rolex watch. And Fatal, and I don't got to go into that, you know what I mean? Because I like for people to tell their own stories. And Fatal had his book, so I'm sure he told his story of his last days with Pac, you know what I mean? So people go buy Fatal book. His book is out now.
Yeah, man, I was just about to ask you about that because Tupac bodyguard Frank Alexander said that Tupac and Fatal was having issues before Tupac died.
You know what I mean? I'd rather the people go get Fatal book, let them read it, you know, themselves. You know, they loved each other. You know what I mean? They both loved each other. And Fatal not here to really tell his side of the story. So I just, you know, I leave it like that. And I know, you know what I mean, if Pac was still alive, whatever he had with Fatal, they would have worked it out. You know what I mean? It was always family. It was always family.
Right. I always found that weird that Tupac was giving away his jewelry days before the Vegas incident. Do you think Tupac knew something was going to happen? Not
only that is weird. You know, even before he went to New York, he bought one of them portable cameras. You remember those cameras that they first came out with? You can just like portable cameras. You know what I mean? He bought 4 or 5 of them. He bought like 4 or 5 of them, and he just came one day to us and was like, "We don't have enough pictures, man. Let's just take some pictures." And he gave it, and we were just going around taking pictures. And he never done that. This like a week before he died.
Wow, man! By everything you're saying, Tupac had to know something was going to happen to him.
It always had me. Even to this day, I'm like, why did he? We don't have no explanation for it. You know what I mean? It's definitely something that I always think about. You know, did he feel something? Did he? You know what I mean? It's definitely it was strange for sure.
Right. But is it true Tupac didn't want to go to Vegas because he had some family issues to deal with in Atlanta?
I heard that a few times. That's something that I can't really speak on. I don't know 100%. I never heard Pac say I'm not going to Vegas. He didn't want to go to Vegas. So I really don't speak on it. It would be very difficult. I think if he didn't want to go, he probably didn't want to be around Snoop and him, you know what I mean? Or at the end of the day, Snoop didn't go, you know what I mean? But, you know, we got to look at it, man, from a standpoint that the day and the time that it's, you know, it's time for us to leave this world and the place it's gonna happen. God gonna make sure we there. You know what I mean?
The Vegas incident. Give me a play-by-play of what happened that night when Tupac got shot.
I wasn't in Vegas because Pac decided like whoever went to New York with him, they're gonna go to LA and stay, and those who was in LA gonna go to Vegas with him. I just get the phone call. I left out of Pac house and I just get a phone call. First of all, when he fought the dude Orlando Anderson, he got on the elevator. This is what Gaddafi, Edie, and Castro told me. The first person that Pac told him to call was me. He got in the elevator. He said, "Call Moo and tell him I just knocked this NIGGA out." You know what I mean? I try not to use these words anymore, so forgive me. But he's like, "Tell him I just knocked this dude out." So when they called the house, I wasn't at Pac house. Noble answered the phone. You know what I mean? Noble answered the phone, and that's when he said he spoke to him. And I think later on when I called back, Noble was like, "Yeah, I spoke to Pac. He called and told me that he had a fight." Now for me, I'm thinking it's nothing. You know what I mean? I get back to the house, I see Noble running down the hill, opening up his gate, and he's like, "Yo, Pac just got shot." So I'm like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? He just got into a fight, now he got shot. But still, for me, it wasn't nothing. You know, I'm still thinking like, man, Pac got shot 5 times before. Strong dude. He gonna be all right. But unfortunately, you know what I mean? He passed away.
You was at the hospital, right?
Yeah, I was at the hospital. I was at the hospital every day.
So take me through that. Y'all being at the hospital, y'all getting death threats. Give me the backstory on that.
Yeah, we was getting death threats. You know what I mean? We had to pretty much set up our own security task force, pretty much. You know what I mean? Because Pac, his hotel, his hospital bed was on the floor, on the first floor, so we pretty much had to hold him down ourselves. But we was up there. We tried our best to hold him down. I think he would have been proud of us. You know what I mean? Because before that, we was a bunch of youngsters that made a lot of mistakes around Pac. But I think if he would have saw the way we handled the days that he was in the hospital, he would have been proud of us for sure. So we just up there, you know what I mean? And one day we just get the phone call, or his mother, I believe, they called us in and told us that they pulled the plug. And it was like, it was something that it just, you know what I mean? It took us all off guard. Like, for me, I'm thinking that he's a strong dude. You know what I mean? And well, when I actually seen him in the hospital, it was even difficult for me seeing him in a position like that. But when we heard he passed away, man, I think it affected us all in a different way, and it really affected Gaddafi. You know what I mean? Like, and pretty much he never healed from that, and it's something that it caught us all off guard. You know what I mean?
Right. How do you feel when people try to blame Suge Knight for Tupac murder?
I think it's definitely a rumor. You know what I mean? Hands down, I definitely don't think Suge had nothing to do with it. The streets know Suge ain't had nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? Suge ain't had nothing to do with it, man. Suge showed us. He got a bullet skinned him in the head and even in the chest. You know what I mean? There's no way that Suge would have been in the car and telling people to spray this car. You know what I mean? While I'm in the front seat, spray the whole car, and I'm sure I won't get hit. You know what I mean? Nah, Suge, it just was, they just caught him slipping. They caught him slipping that, and it was I guess they probably didn't expect retaliation that soon because it was Vegas, it was the Strip. But if you know California, especially LA, Compton, Inglewood, if you know the gang culture, you know what I mean? And when people always say Pac didn't know gang culture, Pac surrounded by a lot of gang members from Bloods and Crips. He lost homies from gang culture. And he know that retaliation on the West Coast, they're not going to let it down. You know what I mean? They're not going to let it get by. But I guess no one expected it to happen that fast. And that's pretty much what happened.
Right. But is it true that Gaddafi did an interview and he said that he seen a person that shot Tupac and he was going to give information on who did it or whatever? But if I'm not mistaken, people say that the interview used to be online years ago, but you can't find it nowhere on the internet no more. But did you ever see the interview before when it was online?
Most of the homies seen him. You know, Gaddafi seen him. I know that interview you're talking about is also in the police report. You can get it online. He never said he was going to tell, because even the Vegas police, they say in that report that, you know what I mean, it's available to anyone now, that he was uncooperative. You know, he said, like, he seen an arm come out the window, which was a dark arm, and he seen the face because the person looked in his car, like, the people was looking inside everybody's car until he realized, okay, Pac is not in that car. So they looked in the car with Gaddafi and it was in. Then they pulled up, and that's when he said, I seen the arm come out the window. But Gaddafi, At that particular time, of course, he was a street dude. He let the police know, no, I'm not here cooperating. I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to draw no face. And he definitely wasn't going to do that. You know what I mean?
Right,
And it
right.
hurt Gaddafi. How did it affect him, man? I had pages in my book that I touch up on this because a lot of people don't know that. So like Pac and Gaddafi was close. Like they was close. They pretty much was raised together from babies. It affected Gaddafi. And no one in the group was closer than Gaddafi than myself. You know what I mean? When we went back to Jersey, that dude was numb. He told me all the time, like I'm on the chase of death. He was hurt. You know what I mean? He didn't want. He took it real. He took it in a bad way. You know what I mean? That was his homie. That was his big brother. Like he loved him. It really affected him. It definitely affected him. Like I seen him go from barely can smile. I seen him go from we joking, we laugh, to barely smiling after that. You know what I mean?
So I want to talk about Kadada Jones. Was you around Kadada Jones?
Of course. We was around the prison all the time. Like we lived with Pac. You know what I mean? So that was his fiance. She was always at the house. We was always with each other all the time.
Right, right. How did Tupac truly feel about Kadada Jones?
From my point of view, he loved her. Like that, he really, you know what I mean? From what I seen, that he was really in love with her. Hands down. Like he really, really, truly loved her.
How do you feel about people that say that Tupac was going to end up leaving her, or their relationship wasn't real, or Tupac was only with her to help his career? How you feel about people that say that?
I think you got people that's going to always have their own opinion, but from what we've seen as his homies, he loved her. You know what I mean? He was with her all the time. He was engaged to marry her. And that alone would tell you if a person going to marry someone, the majority of the time they marry him from love and hope. You know what I mean? But Pac was still an individual, that he was a celebrity, he was out there. And you know what comes with that lifestyle. You know what I mean? So maybe they talking from that standpoint of view that it didn't make him slow down as that type of individual, but he was intending to marry her.
Right, right. So Tupac leaving Death Row. Did Tupac ever talk to you about him leaving Death Row?
I never heard him say he want to leave Death Row. You know what I mean? That's another rumor that people always try to say, even like in that movie or whatever, made it seem like he was going to leave him. Suge was giving him Death Row. He's not. Pac was going to do Machiavelli Records under Death Row. And he made that clear to us. Because Suge wanted to sign us directly to Death Row Records, and Pac was like, no. You know what I mean? Y'all can't sign to Death Row because y'all going to sign under my record come to either Euthanasia or Machiavelli Records, I forget. But he definitely wasn't. I never heard him say I'm getting off of Death Row. I heard him say I'm starting my own record label under Death Row. That's the next step.
Did Tupac ever complain to you about his financial situation with Death Row? Because his bodyguard, Frankie Alexander, said that Tupac was going to leave Death Row because he wasn't getting the money he was supposed to get. And he also claims that Tupac called the audit on Death Row.
I don't really call, he never really, first of all, people have to realize Pac wasn't a businessman. You know what I mean? Pac loved music. I've never seen a business side of Pac. He wasn't a strong business individual. He was a person that went to the studio and worked, and he loved music and loved doing what he was doing. And second of all, people have to realize Pac was on Death Row for 9 months. You don't usually see your first recoupment check from the industry or your royalties until 1 year later. You know what I mean? At least 1 year later, you would start seeing your first money from the music industry. So by time, from your album sales, so when Pac died, that's when the money started coming in. That's when all the lawsuits started hitting. You know what I mean? That's when his mother was like, no, this is my son, I have to have rights. And that's when she started suing and stuff like that. But people got to be just. You know what I mean? I think this is the thing that they don't really be just when it comes to Suge. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, they have to be just and have to realize Suge put up $1.3 million cash. He bought a house for Pac moms in Atlanta cash. He was paying rent or whatever in homes. Like Pac, he had 2 apartments for us that he was paying rent for. He had a you know what I mean? What you call it? A penthouse suite on Wilshire Boulevard that he was paying rent for. You know what I mean? He had a big house in Calabasas that he was paying rent for. He was giving them monthly money. I remember, I don't know the amount, just to go shopping and buy clothes, phone bills, studio every day. So you got to look at it. I doubt a record company can reimburse and make their money back in 9 months. Pac was living that life Rolls Royces and Mercedes Benz. He was living that life before he even sold a record on death row. You know what I mean? Usually people start driving in these cars after they sell their records. I'm not saying that he wasn't owning them. That's probably what he should have happened. But you got to look at it, man. Suge was he spent a lot of money. You know what I mean? Before he even recouped. You got to understand when Pac and them was riding around with Rolls Royces, no rapper was living like that at that time. Puffy and Cash Money and them, they started doing that 5, 6, 7, 8 years later after Pac died. Pac and Suge and Death Row were the first ones to show rappers are now driving Rolls Royces. Rappers are now living in these big mansions, you know what I mean? So it was new to everyone at that time. So Pac, he never, from a business standpoint of view, he never said, let me look at my books, let me see, you know what I mean? He wasn't into his business. He was only into working. So from what I've seen, he was happy at Death Row. He loved Death Row. He loved Suge. I never heard any conversations of him wanting to leave Death Row. I just know he wanted to start his own record label, and he told us that record label will be under Death Row. It would be a distribution label under Death Row. You know what I mean? That's what I can recall.
Is it true Quincy Jones wanted to sign Tupac to his label?
I'm not sure. I heard that before. I heard Noble say something like that he was trying to get Young Noble a solo deal over there. But from what I can vouch that Pac was saying he's going to start his record label under Death Row Records. Like that's clear. I remember them words coming out of his mouth. Wasn't no rumors, you know what I mean? I'm speaking from what Pac said. Cause he told us, he used to say, man, Suge want to sign he want to sign you guys, the Outlaws, to Death Row. But I told him, nah, y'all not going to sign to Death Row because I want y'all to sign to my label. Y'all going to be my first artist under Machiavelli Records, under Death Row Records. You know what I mean?
What's the story behind Tupac Euthanasia Chain?
The Euthanasia Chain, it came about because Pac wanted to start his own label, Euthanasia Records. Euthanasia. I think, no, it was going to be Machiavelli Records, but Euthanasia was his publishing company, if I'm not mistaken. He was going to start a publishing company. And he just wanted to get that chain made. I don't even know I don't know too much information behind it or why he got it made. It's supposed to have been like an angel with wings, but the angel was the face of a demon, and it was holding a gun. And that's how Pac described it. Like, look, I got this chain made. You know what I mean? It's an angel, so it was his metaphor. It was like a metaphor that he wanted to put out there. And I don't really know too much after that from him just explaining to us from that side of it. You know what I mean? That it was like a twisted angel or something like that.
It was an angel of death, right?
Yes. Now you can say, you can say it's an angel of death. You know what I mean? You can say it. That's what people say, but Allahu Alam, God knows best. And definitely, I'm not sure.
I heard an interview from somebody named Ricky Ross, and he told a story about being on a movie set with Tupac while Tupac was shooting the movie Gridlock, and he did a card reading for Tupac, and Tupac pulled out the death card. Have you ever heard that story before?
I never heard of nothing like that. Wow. I never heard of it, but most of them cards, they always talk that stuff. Most of these readers, they got to get you to come back. You know what I mean? You never really have a person that got something read or a tarot card and it says something positive. It always got to frighten the people so you can come back and believe that them people are going to be the ones that have a solution for you. So I always look at them type of people as scam artists. And I'm sure Pac did too, man. Like, we don't believe that joke. He ain't going to ever say, hey, tomorrow you're going to have a nice day. Because now we have no reason to come back and pay you more to read again. You know what I mean? I do remember this, that one day we was in his house in Malibu, and he got a fan mail. I remember this. And it was from a lady. And I remember Pac reading the letter to us, and the lady was saying things like, Pac, you don't know me, but I need you to listen, read what I'm telling you, pay attention to what I'm telling you. Your life is in danger. You need to change your life. Like, I remember the woman saying things like that. And Pac was like, what y'all think about that? And we probably just brushed it off like she's a nutcase, you know what I mean? A fan that, you know what I mean? But I do remember she was reaching out to him and saying, your life is in danger, the way you have to change your life. Like, you know what I mean? And I remember we was like, man, she's crazy. But Pac, he took it upon himself to read us that letter and ask us, what do we think about it? You know what I mean? Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, bro. I never forget that because we was in his house in Malibu, and literally his backyard was the ocean. And like I was so messed up at that time that we used to sit in his living room, and I remember the sound of the ocean. SubhanAllah, and this is crazy. I thank Allah for His guidance, man, because the sound of the ocean, it was to me, it was like destroying my soul. Like I couldn't stand it. You know what I mean? That's how I know at that particular time of my life I had no inner peace. Because I kept saying, man, the sound of the ocean, the waves. Now I can listen to the waves all day and it's beautiful. But at that time I was like, man, these waves get on my nerves. I can't even relax. And Pop was like, Moo, you don't have no inner peace. He's like, if the waves are bothering you, that means you really don't have any inner peace. And I remember I was like, these are certain incidents that I will never forget because these were certain incidents that made me start reflecting on life. Like these were the seeds that like Pop was dropping and certain lessons of life was being dropped that I was paying attention. Like, wait a minute, is that what it is? That I really don't have no inner peace, that waves, something that's beautiful, or ocean that that God created, and the sound is beautiful, but it feel like it's tormenting to me. Like, you know what I mean? So we used to sit in his living room and just talk, sometimes have deep conversations like that.
So the person that made Machiavelli was the one telling you about inner peace.
Yes, bro. See, Pac had that side. Pac had that side in him, man. That like Pac was a very intelligent person. He read a lot. He was a very intelligent person. He wasn't just like this. He was wild, but he had this side in him. Like he was very family orientated. When most artists would be at a club and want to be out, he would just want his mother and his sisters and them to be at his house frying him chicken, or his cousin Moo. Like he was that type of person. That's where he found his peace at, being around his family. You know what I mean? So some days he would sit and just listen to the sound of the ocean, and I thought them jokers was crazy. Like, man, Pop used to listen to people like, what's her name? Atlanta Morissette. Like, Pop was different. You know what I mean? He had a different, he was a reader. He was very educated, very intelligent guy and wise, you know what I mean? He just got caught up with the circumstances that was around him, but he was ahead of his time.
You don't have to speak on this if you don't want to, but if you don't mind me asking, what really happened with Sam Snead?
I think Pop just told us to go in the studio. I think he told me first to go in the studio and just beat these dudes up. And I was the first one in there. And these are the things like I can admit. Now when I look back at it, you know, a man with kids, a person that changed his life, I don't agree with it. But I ain't about to do a Snoop Dogg and throw Pac under the bus. It was one of these things that we felt like, you know what I mean? I think Pac was mad because, you know what I mean, they was down with Death Row. Dre, my bad. And Dre wasn't really coming around or whatever. They falling out. So Pop look at it like, how's these dudes coming up in the studio? They don't really. It was just wild street stuff that we was young. We was wild. You know what I mean? Pop told us to go in there. He's like, move, going in. And I just went in there to start hooking off on people.
Yeah, man. Crazy situation, man.
We was young and wild. You know what I mean? We was young and wild, and that's the life that we lived at that particular time. And my loyalty was with Pop. You know what I mean? And whenever he tell me that, like with the Sam Snead, it was just another day that Pop said, "Move, handle it," and I handled it. You know what I mean? And I didn't even ask questions. Now I can look back at it and say, you know what, man, we should have been behaving a little differently. You know what I mean? But we was young kids, man. 17. Pac himself was 25 years old.
Right. Was he at least trying to fight back, or he just took the L?
I think it was more than it was a few of them, man. They took the L hands down. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't mind sitting talking to him over some coffee like a man down and shaking his hand. But you know, they were surrounded. You know what I mean? They was out of their territory. It really wasn't much they can do. You know what I mean? It really wasn't much because it was a few of us. I forget who else from the Outlaws that joined me, but they wasn't outnumbered. But I remember it wasn't something where we took advantage of them and started stomping them and stuff like that. You know, I remember when I walked in the studio, I was by myself. And when I started, I eventually started teeing off, and then the rest of them came after. I think, we caught them off guard. You know what I mean? I don't think they was expecting that. Obviously, if they came to that studio, they wasn't expecting for someone to do something to them. You know what I mean? I'm at a point in my life now that if I ever see Sam Snead, I would sit down and say, look, you know what I mean? We was young, wild. I'm sure even if Pop was around, things would have changed. He probably would have, shook your hand. I would shake his hand and say, look, man, you got to understand. Forgive me. I was young and crazy.
Right. And what was the real reason behind Sam Snead getting beat up?
Because they was down with Dre from what we knew. Pac was mad that Dre got off the record label or whatever, and Pac loyalty was with Suge, so Pac was at that particular time mad at Dre for whatever reason. And he was in the studio. I just remember Pac came in the studio and was like, "Move, come over here." I'm like, "What?" He was like, "Sam Snead and some other producers is in the studio. Dre boy, going in and put, do what you got to do right now." And I immediately went in there, leading the pack. You know what I mean? It was a couple of them, and a few of them, and we chased them out the studio. And it was all like Pac was doing it because of his loyalty to Suge, and I was doing it, my loyalty to Pac.
What was Tupac's issue with Jay-Z?
Pac was again, a lot of East Coast rappers are very subliminal, especially back then. They was very subliminal with their attacks on Pac. They wasn't straightforward. I had to cover this in my book, matter of fact, but I'll just break it down simple for you is for the listeners that because Biggie and Jay-Z had an alliance together. They was both from Brooklyn. And there was a video I remember a long time ago. I'm not sure. I believe it might have been Jay-Z video. And in the video, you see them sitting at a table like they playing some type of game. And then they was like, "Oh, yeah, we're going to go get some of that money from the West Coast. There's a lot of money out there. Like, we need to go take that money." And then another song I think that Biggie was on the Jay-Z album where Biggie was like, "If Faith had twins, she would have two Pacs." Get it? Remember that? Like two Pacs. So he was taking shots at Pac on Jay-Z album. So Pac looking at it like, "I don't give a heck, man. If you letting this dude on your album take shots at me, you my enemy now." You know what I mean? So Jay-Z was showing his alliance back then to Biggie, even in that video where he was like, "There's a lot of money on the West Coast. We're gonna go out there and get that." They was taking slicks. This was like the heat. This was like in the midst of the East Coast West Coast. See, a lot of people don't know the East Coast West Coast beef was pretty much boiling before Pac came to Death Row. You know what I mean? That's why you hear people like Ice Cube and them and with the West Side Connection. They was talking slick. And there was a lot of West Coast people, artists that was mad at East Coast at that time because they felt like the East Coast wasn't giving them their props. And he was always taking subliminal shots at the people from the West Coast. So when Pac came, he wasn't a forerunner of that. He wasn't the one. He wasn't the one who initiated the whole East Coast West Coast beef or whatever. He was the one that just came. He just like they passed the baton to him. You know what I mean? Ice Cube and him was already doing it. But I want to say one thing about Jay-Z, man, that made me gain some respect for him. Because when Pac was alive, he was coming at everybody. You know what I mean? He was getting at everybody, and the majority of them wasn't saying anything back. I don't think Jay-Z ever replied. Biggie wasn't saying nothing. Pac was just, you know what I mean? He was aiming his missiles at everybody, letting them go. Like, he was getting at everybody. And I remember one day I was in L.A. This was years after Pac died. We was even doing songs dissing Jay-Z at this particular time. And Steve Lobel, he was our manager at that time. He's from the East Coast. He's very respected back home. They all know him. And he called me one day. He was like, "Mo, I'm going to Run DMC is going to, I think it was the Guitar Center on Hollywood Boulevard. They're going to get their star at the Guitar Center. You want to roll up there with me? It's a private gathering, but come with me." So I said, "Cool, let's go." So I went up there, and Snoop was there, Jay-Z was there, and I wasn't going to talk to him. I was still like, man, I ain't about to say nothing to that dude. Like, you know what I mean? Of course, I'm not, Steve don't want me to act rowdy as a private gathering and by invitation only. And Run DMC, I had a lot of respect for them. By that time, I was writing songs for DMC from Run DMC. A lot of people don't know that. DMC from Run DMC, when he did his solo album, I wrote maybe one or two songs with him on his album. So that was like an honor for me. They're legends, you know what I mean? So I said, I'm not going to do no problem. I'm not going to cause any trouble there. But I'm not going to show no respect to none of these dudes. And I just like, you know what I mean? Left it at that. So what made me look at Jay-Z a little differently because he walked over to me. And he was like, "What's up, man? How you doing?" And I was like, "I'm all right." Like, I was still ghetto with it. Like, I'm shocked he coming. I'm like, "I'm good." He's like, you straight, man?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, what's up?" He's like, "No, I'm just saying." Like, he was very respectful. So that was like the first time that I seen maturity of someone that we beefing with or someone we had words with, because the only way you're going to survive in any industry is that you have to change, you have to mature, you have to adapt, and you have to mature. You know what I mean? So Jay-Z showed a side of maturity where he didn't do he wasn't on no ignorant stuff, man. And that day, from that day, I had a little more respect to him.
Out of curiosity, did Tupac ever bring Jay-Z name up around you? Did he ever tell you how he truly felt about Jay-Z?
Only on the mic. You know what I mean? I remember him destroying him on the mic. That was it. Like he wasn't really, because Jay-Z, you got to realize at that time he wasn't known like that. He wasn't really known like that. So nobody knew who Jay-Z was. Pac was just paying attention to people that was affiliated with Biggie. So when Pac, like people didn't know who a Chino XL is really, but when he said something about Pac, Pac came at him too. So Pac wasn't just getting at anybody because it didn't matter the level that they were on in the industry. If you talk about Pac, he was making people famous. Because he was saying their names and people was like, okay, who's a Jay-Z? That's when they started realizing there's a rapper named Jay-Z from the East Coast, so Chino XL. So he never really sat around and spoke about him because he didn't know him. He didn't know him personally, like how he knew a Biggie and a Puffy. Like he hung around these cats. You know what I mean? He hung around these dudes, so he was more hurt when he felt betrayal from them. But for Jay-Z, for Pac, he was like, okay, you want to be part of it? Welcome to the list. Like, that's how he took, you know what I mean? So he wasn't around sitting speaking about him like that.
What was Tupac's issue with LL Cool J?
We seen LL, though, right at the last, like the week before Pac died. We seen him. He was like, he was like, you know what I mean? We was at the MTV Awards. And Suge and Pac, I remember walking in, and Suge and Pac and them was sitting somewhere, and I was like, where's my seat? And they was like, you got to sit over there. And LL was just like, he was paying attention to everybody who was walking with us, and he was respectful. He spoke to everybody. He was respectful. He spoke to Pac and Suge. You know what I mean? So I really don't know. I really can't recall why Pac started doing songs against LL. But like I said, a lot of times the East Coast rappers they were saying subliminal stuff in their raps. You know what I mean? And I think even in that Who Shot You, he might have came at Ice-T. He might have said some slick stuff against Ice-T. Pac was just like that, man. You know what I mean?
Right. So it had nothing to do with Kadada Jones, right?
Nah, it wasn't nothing against Kadada Jones because, of course, we know I think they had some type of relationship before Pac, but that was years ago. You know what I mean? Pac wasn't that type of person that he's going to start, attacking his fiancé exes and stuff like that. No, because, that was in the past. It definitely wasn't because of that.
What was Tupac's issue with Ice Cube?
I never heard it. I know one time, me being a hothead, it was a chance that I was going to be on a song with Ice Cube, and I ruined it because after Pac died, Cube was doing a lot of songs, and Cube at that time, he was like, I grew up listening to Ice Cube. He was like my favorite rapper. You know what I mean? Him and Pac. So, but after Pac died, I remember he used to say a lot of stuff about West Coast this, he's the West Coast Don, and my mindset at that particular time, because I was so immature and irrational and just explosive, I used to listen to Cube saying that he's the West Coast Don and he's this and this, and I thought he was dissing Pac. So one day, a friend of mine, his name is I think his name is One Eye. He used to produce for Cube, and he also used to produce. I had a group that I was trying to put out from Irvington back in the day called the Corsican Brothers. It was two little homies from my neighborhood. And I flew them out to Cali, and One Eye used to do the beat. So one day, One Eye called me, like, look, man, I'm in the studio with Ice Cream. Come by yourself. I want you to get on the song on one of the songs that I produced. And it was the song, We Can Do It, Put Your Back Into. I forget the name of that song. You know what I mean? So while I was in the studio, I started drinking, Stacks for the Lie, because that's my mindset. I started drinking, and then I started to think about all the songs. And I'm like, man, he was dissing Pac. So I went up to him. I was like, yo, Q, man, let me holler at you. In this song, you said that you the West Coast Don, man. Was you trying to talk about Pac? And I think he was shocked because he's like, this little dude in the studio that comes in on the song with me, and all of a sudden he's pressing me like this. And he was like, nah, I wasn't talking about Tupac. And I was like, well, all right. So I went to the bathroom, and I came back, and one night, I think Q just left. So when I left, the dude One Eye called me like 2 days later. He's like, man, what did you say to Ice Cube that day? And I was like, no, I just had something to diss with Pac. And then I know my man One Eye stopped calling me to the studio. And I say this to let people know that this type of mindset ruins relationships. You know what I mean? Because I was like, Q was like a person that I used to look up to. But that mindset, thinking that everybody taking shots at us and shots at Pop, it pushed us in a corner where we didn't really have too many allies. You know what I mean? Nobody wanted to deal with us. Because everybody thought that everybody was beefing with us, and it really wasn't like that. So even if you say that you heard that Pop was dissing Cube or had a beef with Cube, I don't recall that. You know what I mean? I don't recall Pop ever having a beef with Cube. But maybe the fans probably look at it that way. I know at one particular time we looked at that everybody was dissing us. We were paranoid.
How do you feel about Biggie coming to LA 6 months after Tupac death and getting on the radio rapping Long Kiss Goodnight?
I think that was very a miscalculated step on his part. You know what I mean? I think he underestimated the people love for Pac. And I think it was a little arrogant, to be honest. Of course, we don't wish death on nobody. And I'm not saying that, you know what I mean, this is what he get. These not the words I'm saying, but I heard the radio. I remember listening to the radio station and the phone calls that was coming in, the threats, like people was threatening him. I think they asked him like, how you feel about Pac? And it was almost from an arrogant standpoint of view where he was like, I got my own problems. I'm not worried about dude or something like that. And the people took it as a form of disrespect. So I think for him, it was a little arrogant and it was disrespectful. No doubt, it was disrespectful. And I think you got to understand, man, you got to understand the simple principles of the streets or a code that you live by. It's not even the streets. This is a code that every person live by, whether it's political leaders, you know what I mean, whether it's governments, whether it's streets, whether it's tribes. You don't go to somebody else's home court and start attacking them. You know what I mean? Unless you know that you can go to war there on their home turf and you can defeat them. Like, you got to have some type of wisdom and have some type of respect. You know what I mean? So I think when he was doing that, saying he's coming back to Cali and he was doing these type of things, the people probably would have showed him love if he would have showed more love towards Pac. But he came back, like, when Pac was alive, he wasn't that confident. And you know what I mean? When Pac was alive, he wasn't that confident. He wasn't getting on the radio speaking like that when he was alive. So people looking at it like, now Pac is dead. All of a sudden, you have this macho voice and you saying this and that. So I think it was wrong for him. It was a mistake. Unfortunately, it took his life, you know?
Right. I don't know what he was thinking coming to LA so soon.
Yeah, I think that was a mistake for him. You know what I mean? That was a mistake. Like, you got to understand, West Coast is one of the places that them palm trees and the sunshine, it makes a lot of people comfortable. But what we didn't have on the East Coast, what the West Coast had, is they had discipline and they had organization because they was a whole bunch of tribes running around. So they had they was disciplined and they know how to they know how to retaliate. You know what I mean? So I think it was one of them things that unfortunately it cost him his life. He was young. We don't wish death on nobody. That's like Pac going to New York and start dissing the whole New York or somebody that's loved from he would have never done that because he know the consequences of these type of things. It's a code that you got to live by.
How do you personally feel about Biggie coming to LA, promoting his album, and going to the Vibe party?
You know, at that particular time, we didn't like it. You know what I mean? You know, we just lost Pac in a few months. I look at it like, you know what I mean? I look at it like, wow, they got some, like, I felt like it was disrespectful. I felt that way at that particular time. You know what I mean? Like, it was disrespectful for them to even come out here and get on the radio and you know what I mean? And just do what they want to do. And I felt like it was wrong.
The Lakewood Mall chain incident. Give me the backstory on that incident, and how do you feel about Murder Rap claiming Puff Daddy had something to do with it?
You know, this is the word we got back from the streets. You know, the streets do talk. You know what I mean? Like, what happens in the street, what goes around in the street, you know what I mean? The streets do talk. So what we heard back then is that Puffy was paying somebody, you know what I mean, a certain amount of money, I think $10,000 or something, to snatch that chain. And you know how some people try to say the chain is only worth $300. That's a lie, man. All them definitely chains was iced out. You know what I mean? So when they try to snatch the chain from Trey was with, I think, two other dudes, and there was a few other Crip dudes. They tried to snatch the chain. They got into a fight, and eventually he got the chain. They snatched it, but they didn't take it. They didn't walk away with it. So eventually he brought the chain back. You know what I mean? And I would say that probably was the beginning of that of the things that unfolded after. You know, that was probably the beginning of the problems that was to come. You know what I mean? So word on the streets was that Puffy was paying to try to put a death row chain in the video. And God knows best how true it is, but this was the words, you know, that was getting back to us.
How do you feel about murder rap accusing Puff Daddy for Tupac death?
You know what, man? You know, the pain of murder on somebody, you know what I mean, it's pretty heavy. But, you know, it's crazy. You know what I mean? It definitely had me thinking. It had me, you know what I mean? Can I sit here and say that he had something to do with it, or he you know what I mean? I can't really come out like that and say, yeah, he did it, but I know, you know, he was moving like a snake back then. So it wouldn't be surprising if he, you know what I mean, he tried to have something to do with it. But I can't really come and say, you know what I mean, yeah, he murdered Pac or had Pac murdered. Unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. But he was connected with the dudes from Southside. We know that. Like, he was paying them for protection. Everybody knew that. You know what I mean? He was paying them for protection. But the murder rap, I don't think I've seen the whole documentary.
Yeah, man, it is a known fact that Puff Daddy was using the Southside Crips for protection when he came to L.A. And it's a known fact that the Southside Crips was responsible for Tupac death.
Yeah, God knows best, man. You know what I mean? God knows best. You know, Puffy, you know what I mean? I can't really make that call. You know what I mean? But I do know you can what you might escape in this life is injustice and oppression and taking the lives of people. You ain't gonna escape it on the day of judgment in front of your Creator. So whoever has some involvement in it and or any of this type of oppression and things like that, they would definitely have to answer for it. You know what I mean? If not in this life, the next one.
What was the issue between Tupac and the Brat?
I think, you know, it's crazy because I met the Brat years after that. She was real cool. And we was actually about to do a song together, man, but I came late to the studio, so by the time I got there, you know, I guess she had that celebrity status where since I came late to the whole studio that I invited her to, she felt some type of way, you know what I mean? So she left. I mean, she called me like, I'm at the studio. Where you at? I'm like, man, I'm 20 minutes away. I got there. She was gone. I'm like, okay. I think, because Pac was wilding out on anybody who was who seemed affiliated with Biggie and Puffy at that time. Like, the Brat probably would just, I don't think she said anything slick about Pac. I think she might have just been in one of Biggie's videos, you know what I mean, and a couple of his songs. So he was like, okay, she on a remix. He was wilding out on anybody. You get on a remix for Bad Boy, he gonna come at you. That's how he was.
What was the issue between Tupac and the Fugees?
The same thing, I think, with the Fugees. He was just, they might have, they probably did. I really don't know. I just wake up and go to the studio and hear a new song and him do it to somebody else. But I forgot why. They must have been, again, a lot of East Coast rappers be saying subliminal stuff, and they had subliminal messages. So Pac would look at it as if they was attacking him, or maybe they was affiliated with, you know, they probably got on a remix or something. But I really don't know why he came at them, you know. Because years later we met Pras. We actually did a song with Pras because they was even like, we don't know. We never said anything wrong about Pac or disrespected Pac. But Pac was on one, man. He was in that mode where he attacking anybody. You stand next to Biggie, he see you in a picture, he might come at you.
Right. So I want to fast forward, if you don't mind. Can you give me a detailed account of everything that happened when Tupac ran into Biggie and Puffy at the 96 Soul Train Awards?
See, I wasn't there, you know what I mean? But when Pac came back, he was excited that he was pumped up, he was amped up, and he was hyped up that he ran into these jokers. And I remember him saying, like, "Moo, if you was there, man, you could have put hands on Lil C's." Because at that particular time, you know what I mean, I wanted to like meet Little C so bad, like wanted to him and just get that fade, you know what I mean? Because I look at it like he was Biggie, little homie. He looked like he was on my level. So I used to say, Pop, man, when I see that dude, leave that dude for me, like, you know what I mean? So Pop, I just remember him coming like, man, Moo, if you was there, man, you could have put hands on Little C's, because he was the only one mouthing off. And he was saying that how when he ran into Biggie and Sugar was there, but there was a lot of security and police there, so they couldn't really do nothing. But they was mouthing off where Lil C's was mouthing off. You know what I mean? He said Little Caesars was running on like this East Coast and Pac was like West Coast, and they was going back and forth like that. And he said Biggie was saying something like, "Man, that used to be my homeboy," and so Pac said he heard his name being called because he just won the award. You know what I mean? So when he heard his name being called, he ran into the building and he heard Puffy coming down the stairs. Like, where they at? Somebody must have went and got Puffy. Like, where they at? So Puffy was coming, downstairs like macho. Like, where they at, man? And Pac was coming up the stairs and he said, "We right here. I'm right here." And he said when Puffy seen him, he just lift the window up and jumped on the tour bus. Got out of the way. got out of there. Yeah, Pac used to wild out, man. I remember one time I thought, because when you teenagers, man, you think you strong. And so one time, Pac, when you young, especially me, when I was young, I felt like I could take anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I just had that much heart. Like, I was just so courageous that even if I tried, they might beat me up, but I just felt like I can do it. Let's make it crack. Because I remember one time we was all in the trailer on one of the movie sets, and for some reason I thought I could like take Pac. You know what I mean? And we started arguing, and I used to always talk back to him. I was one of the outlaws. I think that's one of the reasons he respected me a lot, because I used to give him mouth back. Like his little brother, I would give him mouth back. You know what I mean? And then one time I was like, man, I gave him some mouth back, and he was like, what? Of course it wasn't with the fist, but he was like, what? I was trying to test him. So he grabbed me to wrestle me, and I thought, like, for some reason, I was like, man, this dude looks skinny. I definitely know I got him. Man, Pac was strong as hell. He wasn't buff, but he was very strong. Like, you know what I mean? He put me in my place real quickly, man, and I was like, okay, let me stop running my mouth, man, because he just he did like a big brother, little brother spanking, where he was like, okay, man, I'm just letting you know, Moo, So he was that type of person, man.
So Tupac was official when it came to the hands. Then he could really fight.
Pac was Pac had I would say he had hands. Like I would definitely say I would say, see, let me be clear. Like, I'm from Jersey. Like Jersey, where I'm from, Jersey, Irvington, and North, boxing, similar to Philly, boxing was part of our culture. Growing up, we had to box. And when I first came around Pac and his family, his big cousins, Bill, which is the brother of Castro, he was always in and out of jail. They New Yorkers. And me and him used to always slap box. And Pac grew up around these type of guys, like his big cousin and them slap boxing and stuff like that. So Pac, he was just a dude, like he going all out. That's it. Like, I could say he's not no punk. You know what I mean? He's not no punk. Like, you got people that has hands, and then you just got people that's courageous, that's gonna throw his hands, and he just gonna give you that crazy fight, and that's how Pac is. You know what I mean? It might not be like a person who have hands might try to stick to a little boxing code here and there. Pac probably gonna do everything, slam you on your head, do some kicks and everything. You know what I mean? But Pac was more of a shooter. Like, honestly, if I can say, and I can be wrong, if I'm wrong, forgive me. But as a person, because there might be other people that might see it and say, nah, man, don't. You know what I mean? We always want to show the good side of Pac, but this is also a good side of him that. You know what I mean? Defending. So I think Pac was more, he gonna shoot you probably before he fight you. Pac had no problems with pulling out his gun and putting a hole in somebody if he had to. That's how he was. Like, if he go get that gun, man, you better, you know what I mean? You better get the hell out the house.
What about Gaddafi? Could he fight? I mean, you can look at Gaddafi and you can tell he got hands.
Yeah, Gaddafi had hands. See, the Jersey crew, we had hands because we grew up like that. So, for example, I wouldn't clearly say Pac had hands like he grew up in Jersey or Philly or Castro or Edie had hands, but they all gonna fight. You know what I mean? Like, they're gonna get down. But myself, Young Noble, Gaddafi, and Fatal, the Jersey that we grew up, Essex County, you had to have hands. Like, we just grew up slap boxing. Like, that's how it is. So you know how many times we had to settle our beef with slap boxing? Fatal and Gaddafi, myself and Fatal, myself and Gaddafi. Like, myself and we always used to slap box. That was part of our culture, you know what I mean? We never played with Pac like that, you know, he was our big brother, but that's how we got down. Jersey crew, we had hands, bro. Now, my brother got hands like, man, my brother grew up and he grew up in a time in Jersey where like crack cocaine came. My brother used to get into a fight, man. I remember my brother used to get into a fight every single day in my neighborhood. Like, my brother loved to fight. And if he would have kept down that route, he would have been a professional boxer. Like, when we met Jay Prince, it was the time Jay Prince was ready to sign my brother. We all was I think we was in Vegas at this time. Myself, Jay Prince, Floyd Mayweather, all of us. And my brother was sipping on the Heineken, and Jay Prince was like, yeah, that's Napoleon, brother, man. He's a boxer. And I remember Floyd Mayweather was like, he's a boxer, he's drinking beer. And I think Jay Prince seen my brother hands, like, practicing shadow boxing. And Jay Prince was like, yeah, but I'm sure when he's ready to get back in that gym and get right, man, he going to be dangerous with them hands. My brother was dangerous with his hands. Like, it's known in Irvington, New Jersey and Newark, New Jersey, that because my brother used to box, he you know what I mean, go to the box. Even when I was a young kid, me and my brother used to go to the boxing gym together. So I would say I went with him a few times. One of the old head dudes from my block used to take us there, and they laid down the basic techniques of boxing for myself. I stopped going. My brother continued to go because my brother just loved to fight. He was just one of them people that every single day he go outside and he would get into a fight. So he had a name in our neighborhood, a reputation of just knocking dudes out. Nah, hands down, my brother, man. He when it comes to them hands, he's a legend in Irvington. Like, if you go to anybody who talk that gangster stuff from my block, Chancellor Avenue, Irvington, in our era, they all would vouch and say, you know what? Yeah, his brother was knocking dudes out. My brother was not. I seen my brother knock dudes, and my brother, we short in stature. My brother I seen him knock huge dudes out. You know what I mean? My brother, man. So. But it got to an era, like, my brother was sticking to fight. He got shot because of that. You know what I mean? One day, some dudes pulled out. My brother was, this when we know that the era was changing. My brother was like, no, let's fight. And the dude pulled out a gun and shot him in the stomach. Wow. And that's when we started realizing, like, the era of fighting is over. But my brother was always on that. Like, I had family members who, my brother would jump out and say, let's fight. And my family members would jump out with the guns. And I used to always have to tell my brother, man, things change. People don't fight no more. Stop trying to fight. And he had to find out almost the hard way when he got shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we was about it, man. You had where I was from, man. The way I was raised, like, you had, and my brother was like, my brother, he's crazy now, but imagine back then, Islam changed him a lot. Like, people come on his page like, man, this dude's still crazy, but back then, he was 100% more wild and crazy. He was the biggest drug dealer in our neighborhood. You understand? He was like the biggest guy in our neighborhood. He came up, all the OGs was jealous of him. They tried to kill him a few times. It was wars around my block because of that, like wars. I'm talking about people that we grew up with each other. It was wars. So my brother was very controversial, every day he mouthing off to somebody and also mouthing off to the little dudes. So when the little dude talked back to him that's my size, my brother would make me fight him. And sometimes these would be my friends. And I'd be like, nah, man, I can't fight him. You know what I mean? But sometimes I had to fight friends because of my brother.
Hit 'em up. Give me the backstory on that song and how that song came about.
Well, Hit 'em Up, we did 2 Hit 'em Ups. The first one, all of us was on it. And when we got back, that I believe, like, that song, Biggie and them took our beat from that song. I guess when Faith was around, she told him they're doing a song, This and You. And they went back and did a remix or something like that. So Pac decided to, do something different, but use the word take money. So Pac decided to come back and say he's going to do another Hit 'em Up. So we was in the studio and Pac said, we're going to do another song and we're going to kill it. So we're going to, we're going to go all in. For me, I figured I was on the first song, so I didn't even realize it was going to even get released like it did and blow up. So I wasn't really tripping. I was just like doing my thing. Like, man, I don't even feel like writing today. And Pac Pac, Gaddafi, Faden, and Edie, just like, they was going all in. And that's how it came out. Just, you know what I mean? Pac was like, man, we about to do a song. They stole with our beats. I forget what beat it was. And Pac was like, I'm going to take this beat and we're going to flip it. They were saying, get money. We're going to say, take money. And that's how it came about.
So Tupac told Faith that he had a song dissing Biggie, and she went back and told Biggie what Tupac said.
I think initially they was in the studio. I wasn't there, but they was in the studio where they heard the song with Pac. You know what I mean? I don't know why Pac would play it for him anyway. And they went back, and Faith must have went back and told Biggie they got this song Diss Me, and they using this beat. And I forget which beat. So he went and did the beat with Junior Mafia and on one of his songs, but I forget exactly which beat it was. I forget, over 20-some years ago. So when Pop heard it, he got furious. He was like furious, man, and he went and did the hit him up and that's, you know what I mean. I think that was crazy, bro.
And Dr. Dre wanted to be a part of Hit 'em Up, right?
And Dr. Dre came to us. I remember. He actually came to me and he was like, "Man, y'all should let me produce that record." He was like, "Man, I heard that record." I said, "Well," he's like, "Hit 'em Up," and y'all came and he said, "Y'all should let me produce it." You know what I mean? Like he wanted to go back and put a beat over it because he knew that before it was gonna be released how hot it was. But Pop just stuck with I believe that was Johnny J. You know what I mean?
What was the reaction of the public when y'all came out with Hit 'em Up?
I don't think we realized how powerful that song was. And when I mean how powerful, how disrespectful it was, you could say to that magnitude that it was a diss song, and diss songs mean disrespect. It was a diss, you know what I mean? And it was I don't think it was probably one of the most, like they said, hands down, it was brutal. It was brutal. So I remember just waking up one day, turning on the radio in LA, and every few minutes that song was being played. Every time a car would drive past, and this was the time people didn't really know how we looked. This was before we was even, videos was out. So people be bumping Hit 'em Up before the video came out, man. And it seemed like every other car that was driven past us, or everywhere we went, we heard the people bumping it. And Hit 'em Up came out on the B side of How Do You Want It, and I think it sold about, that single sold about 3 or 4 million, but I really think it was because of the Hit 'em Up song. Because people was going to purchase Hit 'em Up, but they had to buy How Do You Want It, so it looked like How Do You Want It. Of course, not to take away from it, but Hit 'em Up, I think it sold about 3, 4 million, if I'm not mistaken, that single.
The One Nation album. What is the reason why Tupac wanted to make that album, and what is some of the stuff Tupac had in store for the One Nation album?
The One Nation album, because Pac was getting tired of, at that particular time, the people was running with the East Coast, West Coast beef. And Pac was like, "Look, man, I'm originally from New York. So to make it seem like I hate the whole East Coast, this is oppressive, this is a bias, and it's not true." So Pac was like, "Man, I'm going to reach out to New Yorkers that I love and West Coast people that I respect, and even the South, like Scarface and, you know what I mean, the Looney and the Boot Camp Clique and Buckshot Shorty and all them, Smith and Wesson, Helter Skelter." Pac was like, because they from Brooklyn. And he was like, "These are the guys from Brooklyn I love, and I want to put an album together." You know what I mean? You had Greg Nice. He reached out to Greg Nice from Nice and Smooth, like a legendary old school rapper. So Pac was pretty much trying to put that album together, including the Outlaws, and he was trying to put that album together to show, like, look, I want to bring people together while the media is trying to divide us and make it seem like we perpetrating this East Coast, West Coast beef. I'm going to bring a lot of people from the East Coast, the West Coast, and the South together to do an album. And that was his goal, He did the album, but he died not too long after we finished recording it. Like, he flew the guys from Smith and Wesson out, Buckshot Shorty, and then we all stayed at Pac House. And one of the brothers just died. I forget his name, the big brother, man. I think he died of coronavirus like a month ago, man. He was Jay, real good dude, man. What's his name, man? Big Thor. Big Thor was Buckshot Shorty, big brother, man. He was a thorough dude. I just heard the sad news that he passed away. He was from Brooklyn. And they all was out there, man. And Pac wanted to do an album to try to, move towards a positive direction.
I always heard this rumor, man. Is it true that Tupac was going to stop making music and focus more on his acting career?
I heard that. I heard him say he wanted to get into politics. I heard him say that he wanted to get into politics and more into acting. So I think Pac would have been, like I said before, he probably would have been the first Will Smith, like a person who transitioned from music into becoming one of these big actors. And Pac, he had the potential. He was going towards that route. That's why right before he passed away, he did 2 movies. He was going to get into more acting. He was writing movies. He was writing screenplays. I remember he wrote a screenplay where he wanted us to go around America doing the screenplay where we would pretty much act out his album. You know what I mean?
Right. Hey, yo, Tupac auditioned for Star Wars, right?
For Star Wars? I never heard nothing. I never heard that.
What about Forrest Gump?
I never heard of that either, but it doesn't mean that it's not true. You know what I mean? Because he definitely, his passion and love for acting, he loved it. So you never know.
Keisha Morris. How did Tupac truly feel about Keisha Morris?
He married her. So that says a lot. He married her. He respected her. And I think up until he died, they always had like a relationship, a friendship together. He respected her. She was a good person. Like I never heard him say anything wrong against Keisha. Keisha was a nice person, even the way she treated us. You know what I mean? Because we was kids, man. We used to go up to her apartment. We was young. We was wild. We used to actually sleep there in Harlem. You know what I mean? So she was a nice person. Pop loved her. From what I seen.
What was the fallout between Tupac and Treach?
I really don't think it was really a fallout. To be honest with you, I think Pac and Treach, it always been some type of respect there. You know what I mean? It always been some type of respect there, but it really wasn't a fallout like that. I don't really recall. You know what I mean? I just know I used to hear Pac saying that when he was first coming up, a lot of these East Coast rappers that he was around used to talk slick. Like, you would never be better than me. They used to do that type of slick talk. You know what I mean? But it never was. Like, I never heard Pac come and say he fell out with Treach. You know what I mean? I never heard him say that, because I think it was all, even if they didn't get along at times, I don't think he ever openly expressed that. I think it was always it was respect there.
I remember some years ago, y'all was going back and forth on Instagram, and you made a comment saying that Treach told Tupac that he'll never be better than him.
So you got that from IG?
Yeah, I remember some years ago where, y'all was going back and forth. That's the reason why I brought it up.
Yeah, well, the reason why I said it at that particular time, and I hope after the end of this interview, we would touch upon, like, that, like, we reminded people that these are the past, and this interview is not to try to bring, old problems back. We want to be, be the ones who try to lead the youngsters in the right direction. But of course, I'm going to answer your questions, but tell the people I'm not highlighting these type of things or trying to bring, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the reason why I mention these things about Treach, see, what happened is, I woke up one day and just saw like Treach with a picture of me behind Pac and saying that I was a snake and this and this and that. My brother and them called me, and so I asked Treach what's up, and he was we was going back and forth, and of course I said those things because he was trying to be disrespectful towards me, and I'm like, you know what I mean? You saying all these things, but you remember you were saying these type of words towards Pac, and that he would never be this for you, and be better than you, and this and this and that, and it was just me putting him back in his place for being disrespectful towards me. But what happened is it pretty much was a war about to pop off in Jersey, where people was calling me on the phone. I was in LA at this particular time, and they was calling me on the phone and was like, look, man, this is about to happen in Jersey. It was about to get out of hand. You understand? It was about to get really out of hand. And it was people I know that was like, we on our way to this block. We know where this person lived who would Treach, and it got to that level. And as me, I'm always the type of person, and this is what I get from my religion of Islam, that I'm always the type of person now that I'm going to try to diffuse a situation without letting it get out of control. If it can happen, you know what I mean? If I'm able to say, look, don't beef, let's end it. And when I do this, it's not coming from a point of view as I'm soft. No, Islam just teaching me, man, to try to avoid as much problems as possible, especially violence, you know what I mean? And I knew how it was about to go down. People was calling me saying, we on our way, and we're going to send you a video, Mo. And I was like, no, end it. So when the dude called me, he was like, would you get on the phone with Treach and squash this beef, because it's about to be like some shootouts in Jersey. He was in Jersey. This was a gang member. He was a very respectful gang member. What's my man name? Man, he's very respectful in Newark. He was a blood, and he tried to do a lot of work now for the kids. So I said, look here, man, of course I get on the phone with Treach. I said, because I always looked at Treach like a big brother. I always had respect for him. So of course, you know what I mean? And if we can end it, of course, let's end it. So I got on the phone with him, and we chopped it up, and that's when he removed his Instagram post, so, but now we cool. But back then, when I was mentioning that to him, it was to remind him, like, now you going hard for Pac, but remember you were saying this to Pac back in the day. You know what I mean?
Right. So
But
do you
Treach is my man. Treach is my man. So when you put this out, you know what I mean? Got to be from a standpoint of view from love, bro. I got respect for Treach, man. That's the big bro.
from your point of view, what went wrong between Tupac and Haitian Jack?
I think that, you know, with the whole thing around that rape, you know what I mean? I think that caused a lot of controversy. That's probably was a split. You know, the Pac got shot. He didn't really know where it came from. But you know what's crazy, like I said earlier, in a lot of those bets, it seemed like the fingers was pointing at Jimmy Henchman when Haitian Jack might have really been the one who was honest when he was saying, look, I didn't have nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? Like, because from what we hear now, one of the guys who did the shooting or whatever and robbed Pop is the one who came out and started talking. So, but I think the whole rape thing is what left a bad taste in Pop mouth, because that girl was introduced to Pop from Haitian Jack. You know what I mean? But maybe he, you know, you got some enemies that you got to say, like, for example, you have enemies that you have to respect and say, yeah, that's my enemy, but he might be a solid dude. Because at the end of the day, you know, like when people who was denying it, it's crazy because the people who was denying it the most seem to be the ones who was involved in it too. Like Fat Joe, like I seen an interview about Fat Joe. Fat Joe is a solid dude. And some of the Pop fans might get mad what I'm about to say. You got to understand with Fat Joe, I think they was mad because Fat Joe said he did an album with Biggie, correct?
Right. Yeah, he said he was working on the album with Biggie, and they was dissing Tupac a lot on the album.
You got to understand that Fat Joe was a real street dude from New York. When Pop was in prison, Pop told him that Fat Joe people used to look out for him, the Puerto Ricans. He said Puerto Ricans used to hold me down. So when Pop came home and he was like, anybody from New York, you got to understand the mentality of a street person. For example, back then, thank God that I grew up, I was able to change and mature, and Allah showed me another life. But where I'm from, for example, when somebody say anybody from Chancellor Avenue that wanted, because my block is Chancellor Avenue, for example, then I'm going to automatically take that as an attack on me. So you got to understand, we riding with Pop. That's big bro. But everybody in New York ain't soft. You know what I mean? So and Pop know that. So when Pop say, for example, anybody in New York that want it, bring it. Pop know that everybody in New York ain't soft. So Pop know when he say that he's going to open up some doors, but Pop was ready. He understand what comes with these things. So somebody like Fat Joe, who's a real street dude, who told us personally that one day he went up to Biggie and said, man, you making the whole New York look soft. You know what I mean? So Fat Joe, of course, a real street dude from New York, it's only right for him to say, you know what, I have to defend my neighborhood or my area of New York. You know what I mean? But when Pac died, one of the first people that reached out to us in the Outlaws was Fat Joe. A lot of people don't know that. When Pac died, man, people that we thought were soldiers, man, they turned their back on us. People who we thought that were showing Pac love, man, when the industry was blackballing us, it was Fat Joe and Bone Thugs and Harmony on behalf of Steve Bell that was giving us shows, that was paying us, that was giving us shows. Like Fat Joe, one day he had an album that was coming out, and he had the hottest album at that time. I think a song with Ashanti, and we was all in New York at that time, but we was deep with all my homies from Irvington and from my neighborhood. We were strapped up, and we was in New York. And Fat Joe was like, "Look, I want y'all to perform. Y'all never really performed in New York. Y'all in New York perform. Everybody you can think of was at that night at that club because it was an album release party from Mobb Deep, from everybody you could think of." So Fat Joe was like, "Look, man, even if y'all want to perform, hit him up." His exact words. This one I mean, he's a solid dude. Fat Joe said, if y'all want to perform, hit him up, I got y'all. Yeah, we're in New York. I'm going to hold y'all down. Nothing ain't going to happen to y'all. If you want to perform, hit him up, do it. I got you. Anybody in New York got a problem, I'm riding with y'all. He said, but, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's better to be mature and to grow past things and to move a little diplomatically. You know what I mean? So we huddled. We was like, should we perform, hit him up? And we came to the conclusion, like, you know what? We're in New York. We ain't going to really just disrespect the people like that. So we ain't perform, hit him up. So when it was over, I remember Fat Joe was like, y'all did a mature move. But he's a solid dude. You know what I mean? He was like, perform, hit him up. And if anybody say something in New York while we're in the club, we banging out with y'all. You know what I mean? So people have to understand that you're going to have people that nobody just going to, you got some people that's solid. He's a solid dude. So when I've seen a lot of comments and stuff like that, like the things he said about Pac and when people was hating on Fat Joe, Nah, man, that just comes with the territory. Pac respected Fat Joe, and I'm sure if Fat Joe would have came at him, Pac would have came back at him, but Pac would have respected him more than the others because he would have said that dude had heart. He ain't doing no subliminal message. You know what I mean?
I want to go back a little because I never heard that before. Can you go more into detail about Tupac telling you personally that Fat Joe had his people look out for him while he was in prison?
Pac, he didn't say security, but he said Fat Joe Peoples had me down when I was in New York State. When Pac was up north, some of Fat Joe homies who was locked up in the Bronx came to Pac and said, "Look, you Fat Joe people, you good here." I remember Pac saying that.
Wow, damn, that's crazy, man. I never heard that before.
Yeah, man. So you gotta give respect where respect is due. You know what I mean? So when people come in at Fat Joe saying, "Oh, he was just a Pac," what he was supposed to do. You know what I mean? If you're a real street dude and somebody call you out, you got to come back like that. Pac would have been a respected enemy to Pac. But I'm glad it didn't go there because, like I said, Fat Joe was solid. When a lot of people when most of the industry turned their back on us, man, Fat Joe was one of the first ones who reached out to us, who brought us. I remember when he was coming on radio stations, man, radio stations in L.A. wouldn't even allow us to come do an interview because they was hating on us, and we was known as the troublemakers. Fat Joe was like, "Man, I'm in L.A. on the radio. Come up here." And Fat Joe used to be on the radio like, "Man, these Pac people, how y'all gonna say y'all love Pac and don't show love to his people?" I remember that. He showed us a lot of love. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, and that was the only time Tupac spoke to you about Fat Joe, right? Was when he told you about how Fat Joe had his people look out for him when he was locked up?
Yeah, that's the only time when he said Fat Joe people came to him in prison and said, "Fat Joe sends us here to let you know we got you. Anything you need, holler at us. Are you good?" You know what I mean?
How did Tupac feel about Biggie and his involvement in the Quad Studios incident?
Yeah, I think Pac was more upset that that word was getting back to him that the people that did do this to him was affiliated one way or another with Biggie and him, whether they was extorting him or word got back that they was going to do this to Pac. So this is one of the reasons that Pac was upset. You know, I think he never really said Biggie, you know, played a part with setting him up, but he felt from what was getting back to him is that he knew about what was about to happen, and he never stepped up to warn Pac. You know, so that was one of the things Pac was really mad at Biggie regarding it. You know, and it just looked shady to him, you know, with too many things. After Pac gets shot, then all of a sudden he dropped this song called "Who Shot You." Like, it just looked shady, you know what I mean? So Pac was like, "Man, it's okay. You know, I need answers." So he never felt that Biggie was the one who put the hit out on him or who set him up. But he just, you know, word was getting back that they knew what was going to happen. And Pac, and he used the example. He said, for example, when they was in Las Vegas, there was an incident where some people tried to rob the Wu-Tang Clan, one of the members of the Wu-Tang Clan. And when they got back to Pac, some dudes that done it, they were some gang members, some gangbangers, and they were some street dudes, I believe, from Compton. And when they was like, "Yeah, we just stole one of their chains," when they got back, Pac was like, "Nah, that's not gonna." Pac was like, "Man, that's not gonna fly." You know what I mean? That's not gonna fly because these guys. Funny, I mean, because these guys these guys are my homies. I have respect for these guys. So no, y'all gonna get their chain back. Because Pac was like, I don't want, you know, pretty much. Not that Pac said it, but I figured Pac didn't want to make it seem pretty much that the dude that robbed the Wu-Tang Clan was with him and he ain't say nothing about it. So Pac went to the dudes like, "No, give their chain back." And then he went to the Wu-Tang dudes and said, "Look, these people done that. I know them. And if you even want to fight them head up, you can fight them head up." That's how Pac ruled. So he was looking, how come, you know what I mean, it wasn't the same love from people like Biggie, who was saying he's the king of New York. If you're the king of New York, then you should know what's happening from the streets. You should be able to speak about on behalf of the streets, and you should be able to bring people to accountability. Look at, for example, Jay Prince. Very respected dude. You know what I mean? Very respected dude. Something happened in New York with one of his peoples. He make a phone call all the way from Houston, and he get that chain back. And he's not from New York. So Biggie, you the king of New York, and Pac got robbed for his jewelry, and you can't even bring people to the table. So that's what Pac was upset. You know what I mean?
What exactly did Tupac tell you about what happened at Quad Studios?
He never really told me, like, in details where he came to me directly and started explaining what happened. He just mentioned it many, many, many times, you know what I mean? And what happened is that he was getting in the elevator, And you know what I mean? When them jokers, they came in the elevator and tried to rob him or something like that, and he reached out. He grabbed his gun. I know Zayd was there saying when Pac went to grab his gun, he just heard one of the dudes say "gun," like on some military stuff, and that's when the shots just started going off. So Pac didn't even get a chance to even shoot and to even defend himself. So from what we heard, I know Pac said that he remember getting shot in the head, and it made him unconscious, and then he said he heard another shot, which woke him back up.
Right. How do you feel about people that say that Tupac only got shot once and he didn't get shot 5 times?
They're a bunch of clowns. Most of them wasn't even there. You know what I mean? Pac, I seen the bullet wounds personally, and we seen the wounds. You know what I mean? We seen the patches. So, and the people that say that wasn't even there. So it's just people that's talking, they wasn't even there. They just trying to discredit them. You know what I mean? Probably trying to get some heat off of them. Even though, unfortunately, it's a situation that happened over 20-something years ago, and people still talking about it. I guess people just trying to get some clarification about it. But he definitely got shot more than he got shot 5 times.
So just to clarify for all the people out there that keep pushing this narrative that Tupac only got shot once, you actually seen the 5 bullet wounds.
He got shot 5 times. We've seen the patches on his head and parts of his body. Like, we've seen he got shot 5 times. That's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? Everybody that's close to him know he got shot 5 times. We know that from the doctors, from the people that operated on him, from his mother, from his family members. The thing that started the rumor about him being shot one time, that was just, people from the East Coast trying to discredit him, unfortunately. To make it seem like, okay, if he's lying about him getting shot, then he also going to be fabricating, the story about our involvement or our knowledge about him getting robbed.
How was it like staying at Jasmine Guy House when Tupac was there recovering from the Quad Studio incident? Because if I'm not mistaken, you and the Outlaw stayed at her house, and y'all also had like a hotel down the street as well, right?
For sure. I don't think the hotel was across the street, but I think it was like in the neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken, man. A lot of stuff I forgot, you know what I mean? But I do know Jasmine Guy she carried herself with dignity. She was well respected. She wasn't the type of person that just hang out in the living room with the guys, you know what I mean? She carried, like, we didn't just all kick it with her. She would be on her side of the house, we would be on our side of the house, you know what I mean? With Pac. You know what I mean? He would lay on the couch, we would watch TV, because he was trying to heal. But most of the time, he just couldn't move. He was laying down, you know what I mean? Sometimes some of us used to have to lift him up, help him get from the couch to walk him to the bathroom. When he finished from the bathroom, he would lean on us and lift to go back to the couch. Like, he was really in pain.
You know something I never thought about? When Tupac was at Jasmine Guy House, Big Stretch was relaying messages to Tupac from Jimmy Henchman. So Jimmy Henchman and Haitian Jack had to know what Tupac was hiding out at.
You think they knew about it? Yeah, well, if people would say, for example, Stretch was with him, they would know. You know what I mean? You know what's crazy? Because now it seems like the fingers point at Jimmy Henchman, not really Haitian Jack. You know what I mean? And that's what's the crazy part about it, because, the people, I guess when Jimmy Henchman was going through his court trial or whatever, I think they all started snitching on each other. And some of the people were saying, like, the finger was pointing back at him. I don't really know Haitian Jack's involvement in it. Of course, when Pac was alive, he thought it was all of them. But from what it seemed like, at the end of the day, it was actually Jimmy Henchman called. And Allah knows best. And, I spoke with Jimmy Henchman. He Muslim. And we spoke, over the phone. I met him a long time ago at the MASH shit, and we spoke about it. But it seemed like, when I did that interview, I remember somebody calling me, like, Jimmy Henchman is going to court. Can you remove that interview? Because I said, man, I'm not moving nothing. You know what I mean? I get asked a question, I'm going to give an answer according to my understanding. I can't. If this is something you do, you made that bed, you got to lay on it. If you had something to do with it, would you pay people to try to take Pac's life, and now you don't want nobody to talk about it? You made that bed, you got to lay in it. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, so that's what it came down to, where it seemed like the hand behind it, from what it seemed like, was Jimmy Henchman.
And Big Stretch had to be giving Jimmy Henchman inside info about where Tupac was hiding out at, because he was the one relaying messages to Tupac from Jimmy Henchman.
Yeah, but they knew, man. You know how many guns was in that house? I don't think they was that crazy to say come back, because it wasn't like Pac was sitting up after he got shot, man, he was, everybody was strapped around him.
And Jasmine Guy was okay with all that. Y'all having guns in the house and everything.
Jasmine Guy was a soldier. Jasmine Guy was a soldier. She understood.
I always found it interesting that Tupac was close friends with Jada Pinkett. He became friends with Jasmine Guy. And if I'm not mistaken, Jada Pinkett and Jasmine Guy was on the same TV show at the time, right? A Different World?
I think that's how he met. Well, he knew Jada Pinkett, but I think he met Jasmine Guy from A Different World. You know what I mean? Like when we was around, they respectful people. So when Jasmine Guy and Jada Pinkett was around, they wasn't like groupies. You know what I mean? They carried themselves with dignity. We was looking at them because the way they carried themselves with respect. Like I said, when we was around Jasmine Guy, she was always in her room. She wasn't like trying to hang out with the guys. I don't think she was drinking or smoking, none of that stuff. She was just a real respectful person that Pop was in need. You know what I mean? He needed a place to lay low, and she was like, she offered the house, and that's respectful. You know what I mean? Yeah, I want to clarify the statement Michael J made on Vlad TV regarding Pop acting one way towards black people and another way towards white people. The week before Pop died, when Pop was in New York, he was pimped. And I remember Michael J, he was a doorman, like a bellsboy at a hotel that Pop was staying in. And he was like, yo, Pop, what's up, man? Where the party at? His attention, like he was just, you know, he was doing it in a nice way, like, yo, Pop, where's the party at? And I remember Pop just turned around and snapped on him, like, man, don't be asking me where no party at, boy, what you trying to set me up, this and this and that. Like, Pop really flipped out. And I was even like, whoa. But I know why Pop was pissed, because Pop was back in New York the first time after he got shot. He don't know who to trust. You know what I mean? He don't know if this dude trying to find his location. So Pop snapped on him, and I remember Michael J. I could be almost 100% correct that it was Michael J. that acted dude, because he was like, you know what, Pop? I'm an up-and-coming actor. He's like, I'm an up-and-coming actor, and pretty soon you'll hear more about me. I'm going to be in movies. I'm just doing this job, you know, to get by and stuff like that. And I remember a couple of years later, I started saying that same face in movies. So that's the only time that I can recall Pop being around, you know, the Michael J. dude, and I'm almost certain that was him. So if he said he used to act different in the room to white people, different in the back, but that comes with the music industry. That comes with the entertainment. Pac was the person, he know how to conduct himself around, and when it's time to be business-wise, he's going to sit down, he's going to conduct himself differently. He's around the people in the hood. You can't go to around your people in your hood and say, hey, pardon me, can you please pass the Grey Put on? Like, it doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? But when he goes to them offices, he's going to know how to switch up his dialect. He's going to know how to conduct himself when it comes to business the proper way. You know what I mean?
Right. Do you think that's the reason why he went on Vlad TV and told that story? Do you think he still got a grudge against Tupac because of how Tupac yelled at him?
Most likely. You know, I never heard the interview on Vlad TV, but I can be certain that was Michael J. If I'm saying his name correctly. I'm almost certain, because I remember Ben calling out and was like, y'all remember that dude in New York? So most likely, he probably saying hello, like some people could have walked in and they was white and say hi, Tupac, and he could have said hello. But he had to realize, you know what I mean? Maybe he didn't understand what Pac was going through at that particular time. Pac snapped because Pac was back in New York, and he don't know who's trying to get an address on him or trying to find out where the private party is, where they try to set him up, you know what I mean? And that's why Pac snapped. So maybe that's what he took from it. And he probably had every right to feel that way, because Pac snapped on him, like went crazy on him. You know what I mean? And I was even like, damn, Pac. In my mind, I didn't say it to him, but I was like, man, why Pac just flipping a dude like that? But as I got older, I look back, Pac, you know what I mean? He wasn't with that stuff, man. He was real paranoid.
Right. So just to clarify, it was nothing personal against Michael J. White. It was just Tupac being paranoid because he was back in New York.
It definitely wasn't nothing personal, man. Pac, first time back in New York after he got shot, he was on edges, you know what I mean? Pac was on edges. He wanted to be careful. He had us out there, like he had a lot of lives that he had to look out for. So when you ask him where's the party at, Pac looking at it like you trying, you know what I mean? You trying to get my location. That's what that was about. That was it. So it wasn't personal, you know what I mean? Because I think even when you start telling Pac he's an up and coming artist and stuff like that, Pac kind of up and coming actor, you know what I mean? And this was his day job or his day gig that he just got to do to get by. I think Pac calmed down and understood, but it wasn't personal. Yeah, that was him who you know what I mean? I'm pretty much 100% certain that was him at the Bells Boy at the hotel, you know what I mean? So by him saying that they was in the same room, and when white people came in, Pac was one way, and towards black people, he pretty much saying what happened to him, that when, of course, if a white person come in and speak and say how Pac going to speak back, but the reason why Pac was upset at him is because you asked where's the party at, where's the location. So Pac looking at it like you trying to get a location on him, and he got to keep in mind that Pac just got shot less than a year ago or a year ago in that same city. You know what I mean? So Pac he ain't take it lightly for a stranger to ask him where you going to be at tonight and stuff like that. So that's why Pac flipped. So I guess Michael Jones is trying to make it seem like they was chilling together and that happened. No, you was working at the hotel at that particular time. And Pac flipped on you because you was asking for the location, and it was just a big misunderstanding. You know what I mean?
Right. So with that being said, man, just let the people know what you got coming up, what projects you working on, and yeah.
Like I said, thanks for having me. You know what I mean? We need people like you. We need the platforms like yourself and what you're doing to help us put out the true, authentic story. You know what I mean? That we can tell our own story, man. So, you know, I got a book that I just finished, and we in talk with something. We pray that something come through for us so that we can release this book. It's called Life is Raw. It's written by a good friend of mine, Suleiman Jenkins, and he written the book on an academic level. You know what I mean? He's a dude that's originally from Brooklyn, from the hood, but he's very educated, went to the best schools and universities all his life in the USA. He did this book in a way, man, where it doesn't matter if you're a gangster, if you're a man, a woman, a child, a imam, a preacher, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, everyone will be able to relate to it because of the style of the way he written it. You know what I mean? So you people need to look out for that. It's going to drop soon. Life is Raw.